What's up, San Diego? Great Wednesday to you. It's your midday hang. Annie and Elsten here with you on San Diego's #1 sports station, 97.3 The Fan. No Annie Halbrun today. She has today off. Craig Elsten joined with Braden Suprenant for 4 hours of live local San Diego sports talk radio. Got some guests lined up along the way. A lot of fun things for you between here and 2 o'clock when Gwen and Chris will check in for their 4-hour show. Matt Scraby's got the Scraby Show a little bit later at 6 o'clock tonight. What's going on, Braden? How are you today?
Doing well, Craig. It's kind of weird not having any baseball on for the entire week. I don't know what. I feel like Major League Baseball is really dropping the ball on this one by not having anything leading up to their World Series.
Did you hear they had a contingency and the Dodgers blew it by not winning in 5? If both teams had ended in 5, it would have started Tuesday.
They would have moved it up.
They would have moved it up, but because of that, they kicked it all the way back to Friday. We got the worst, most lengthy wait possible thanks to the stupid Dodgers.
Well, didn't they lose on purpose twice, right? Isn't that the whole narrative?
According to, yeah, basically.
They're so smart, they lost on purpose twice. Well, if they're that smart, Major League Baseball should have told them to not lose on purpose once.
Yeah, maybe one of those times win.
Yeah.
Try to win that one time. Nonetheless, yeah, Friday, the World Series, we'll get there. I mean, they announced Game 1 starters yesterday. Jack Flaherty for L.A. Okay. At home, I guess that's not a bad call for them. Garrett Cole, of course, for the Yankees. There was never a doubt about that. Cole's one of those guys that he's going to try and figure out a way to get back on 3 days to pitch a Game 7 if it comes to that for New York. The Dodgers don't have any guys like that on their roster. They've got 2 start-only guys, and presumably it'll be Yamamoto in Game 2, and then they'll throw Buehler to the Wolves at Yankee Stadium in Game 3, and I'm already losing interest. Listen, it's going to be a good series. The World Series is going to be a good series. I'm willing and happy to accept that. And I've seen a lot of the is this good or bad for baseball talk over the last couple. I saw The Athletic did a poll on that. Is this good or bad for baseball? Well, first of all, that's a very polarizing and simplistic way to look at anything. They haven't played this World Series since I was 9 years old. So I don't feel like we're over-inundated with Yankees-Dodgers in terms of World Series matchups. 1981 was the last time. You weren't even a twinkle in anyone's eye.
What year was this?
1981?
Yeah, my parents were in high school.
Yeah. You weren't even a zygote yet.
That's right.
You were nothingness at that moment. Now, I'm going to even tell a story about the 1981 World Series in a moment. But simple point being, I'm almost at the point with a week off to get ready to accept what should be a very good and contentious and exciting World Series. I'm not going to root for either team, but I hope the Yankees win. So I guess there's that.
I think the Yankees are the lesser two evils just for Padres fans, right?
For Padre fans' purposes, and I agree with that.
And it's the same thing for like anybody in the American League East or anybody in the American League. Because I got friends that are American League fans in Texas, and they're like, "Oh my God, I have to root for the Dodgers right now because their lesser of two evils is L.A. They could really, couldn't care less if the Dodgers won." I'm like, I'm a little bit of a different opinion on that with you guys.
Well, when I tell a history lesson, I was on the other side of this when I was a kid. But nonetheless, here's what's coming up on the show today. With Annie out for the full show, we've got a couple of our stand-ins lined up. I think you'll look forward to the 11 a.m. hour. Rafi Cantor will join us once again, my co-host on Padres Hot Tub, along with Chris Reed. In the 11 a.m., at least for a couple of segments, in the 11 a.m. hour, we're going to focus on one question, which if you are a very careful Annie and Elsten listener, I brought up 2 weeks ago, which was, what are the Padres' most tradable assets? So we're going to get into that in the 11 a.m. hour. He's always a creative man, A.J. Preller. He always comes up with creative solutions. He might need to come up with some creative solutions to keep the Padres on their championship-seeking course this offseason. What are the tradable assets that he could work with this winter? We will get into that with Rafi coming up at 11 o'clock. Of course, at 12 o'clock, Braden and I will bring you the 12 o'clock sports fix and all the news of the day in the world of sports, including the first full day of NBA action. Last night we had the NBA kickoff doubleheader, or tip-off doubleheader, I think you should say. But
They don't kick off in basketball.
they really don't. I mean, if you do, it's a mistake.
Yeah.
It's a technical foul
Kick.
right off the top.
Legal kick.
I mean, some teams are going to kick a lot of games this year.
I thought the Lakers would have got to kick a game to start the season, but hey.
Wow. They tried to cough up a 17 or 19-point lead.
The power of LeBron and Bronny, Craig. Are you going to buy in?
The power of AD.
That's
There's
right.
a lot more
No. That goes against the narrative. It's Bronny and LeBron. Craig, you excited now as a Lakers fan?
Hey, listen.
Hey, 1-0. Got to be feeling great right now.
I'm excited for Bronny's G League career to get underway.
Hey,
the
more wins they get with Bronny on the roster, the more he's going to stay up there.
If he had hit that shot when Dad passed him the ball, and if you heard on the mic'd up, which was beautiful, as he passed it, he yelled out, "Knockdown," which has to be the thing he says when he expects you to shoot it when you pass, right? Knockdown. And he rose up with confidence, just missed.
Well,
Just missed.
if he would have made that, they would have stopped the game to present the ball to LeBron
Easy
and
now.
Bronny, and then Ken Griffey Sr. and Jr. got to
It
go
would have
out
been
there.
pretty cool. Come
photo
on.
op. No, it would have been cool.
You got a big family.
But
what if Dad passed you the ball and you knocked down a three?
But they would have this huge. It's LA. They'd have this huge presentation. Have to stop the game for 25 minutes. LeBron would be in tears. It'd have been great.
All right. So
What a missed opportunity.
what a missed opportunity. We'll talk more NBA later in the show as well when our friend Sports Illustrated's Ryan Phillips joins us in studio for about 2 or 3 segments. And we'll get into the NBA season there as well. And we'll wrap up the show with you being able to ask Braden and I anything on Ask Us Anything. We also will play Fast Money coming up at 12:45. With all that set up, and we got some great topics for you, I want to start the show a little bit by talking about Fernando. And I do so fully understanding that I need to tell you some stories from my childhood. I grew up in Long Beach, and as such, I grew up a Dodgers fan. And I've told that on the air and publicly many times. A lot of people like to...
Here come the Yahoos.
Exactly.
In the chat,
a lot of people like to hold it against me, like my childhood and my upraising and where I came from. I can tell you I'm 100% a San Diego Padres fan. I'm converted fully. I talked to my dad at length this weekend, and still told him, that day was Game 6. And, he just said, "Well, what do you think about the game?" I said, "All I can say is let's go Mets," and we had a laugh about it. Things do change, and yeah, I still root for the Lakers. I guess a little bit for the Kings. I did grow up there, but I want to tell you about how I fell in love with baseball, because baseball's always been my favorite sport. And it's the sport that I still hold on to as the one I love the most. It's why when I talked to Adam Klug and had an opportunity, around a year ago at this time, to start to think about becoming a host on this station, it was the thing I was absolutely the most excited about, was that I could talk baseball every day. Because I love baseball. I love everything about it. I love the history, the storylines, everything about it. How the game has changed. And the first World Series that I was old enough to remember watching was the 1981 World Series. I was 9 years old, and I don't have a ton of memories from that, Braden, but I do have some specific memories from the 1981 World Series, and one of them is Game 3, because that series, Yankees-Dodgers, started at Yankee Stadium, and the New York Yankees won the first 2 games. They won Game 1, they won Game 2, 3-0 on a shutout, and everyone was, crowning the Yankees. And they came home for Game 3, and Fernando Valenzuela got the ball. And 1981 was Fernando Valenzuela's season. This, a lot of folks will forget, this was
complete games, right?
Oh my God!
Well, with shutout ball, complete game shutouts.
In his entire first 8 years, it was complete games. But 1981 was a strike-shortened season. A piece of the middle of the season got taken out. So it wasn't a full year. They had a first half and a second half champion, and it added a round of playoffs that year that didn't exist any other year that I was growing up. So it was a little bit of a different season. It was a slightly shortened season, but it was Fernando's rookie year, and he got the ball on opening day that year when their intended opening day starter, Jerry Royce, was sick or injured, and he pitched a complete game shutout. And he started out his first 10 games, he was 8-0 with 5 shutouts and 8 complete games. And a 0.50 ERA. Just completely ridiculous, things that used to happen back in the day. Starting pitchers used to finish their games back in this time. I mean, remember, Randy Jones in 1976 completed 25 games for the San Diego Padres and threw 325 innings pitched in one individual season.
Average time of game, 1 hour and 10 minutes.
Yeah, that's literally, in modern baseball, 325 innings would be considered a rock-solid 2-year total for a starting pitcher. Like, you'd almost be called an innings eater on the free agent market. Well, look at this steady Eddie. 160 innings in year 1, 160 innings in year 2. You can count on him. That was half of what Randy Jones put out that time. Well, Fernando was a guy like that. He would start and finish almost every game he started. And Game 3 of the 1981 World Series, I remember for being the first time in my life that I experienced the anxiety of runners on base, traffic, your pitcher's on the ropes. Is he going to get out of it? All of those emotions, right, that you feel as a baseball fan watching what used to be a regular thing, a starting pitcher, 2 runners on, wiping the sweat off his brow, coming set, trying to get out of a jam. Because Fernando that night, he was really not very good. In fact, I want to say this was one of the best worst pitched games in World Series history. Ron Cey hit a 3-run homer in the first inning. Dodgers had a 3-0 lead. Fernando gave it all up. He gave up 2 runs in the second. He gave up a 2-run homer to Rick Cerrone in the third inning. It was 4-3 Yankees, and he got pulled from the... No, he didn't get pulled from the game. That's what would have happened in today's baseball. He would have been pulled from the game in the top of the third inning at the very latest, having surrendered a 4-3 lead. They would have gotten him out of there to get to a fresh reliever. That's not how the game worked in 1981. Fernando stayed in there, weaving and wobbling his way through runners on base basically every inning, utilizing something that you would not even think about this day and age, Braden, which was the fact that the Yankees, coming to Dodger Stadium, had to use their hitters as pitchers. Or their pitchers as hitters, pardon me, right, in the World Series. So I went through the game log just to double check it. Like 3 different times Fernando worked to get runners on base to get to the pitcher slot.
Yeah. It's a fun strategy of having pitchers having to hit.
Yeah, and just struck out, Dave Righetti or struck out George Frazier to get out of innings. And the Dodgers gave him back the lead in the bottom of the 5th inning. Pedro Guerrero hit a double. A Mike Scioscia double play ball put L.A. in front 5-4. And Fernando took it from there, wobbling all the way. His first 1-2-3 inning, retiring the meat of the Yankees order in the 9th, facing them for the 5th time, as Fernando Valenzuela finished a 147-pitch complete game win in a 5-4 Dodgers victory
Does his
over
arm
the
fall
Yankees.
off the next day?
Oh, no, he pitched again.
That's right.
in Game 6.
A little bit different times.
147 pitches. And listen to this line. 9 innings pitched, 9 hits, 4 runs earned, walked 7, struck out 6. 16 base runners, 147 pitches. He finishes the game. Dodgers win that game. Dodgers win the next 3 games after that. They take the World Series 4-2 after trailing it 2-0. That was part of my upbringing that made me a fan of the sport of baseball, was watching that game and seeing Fernando bob and weave his way through trouble, something that I would then see ace pitchers do, year after year in my childhood when starting pitchers often completed games and ace pitchers were expected to complete games. Ace pitchers were expected to get to the 9th inning. Like, if you didn't get to the 9th inning, you didn't have a very good game. Didn't matter really, if you gave up 1 run or gave up 4 runs, you were supposed to get that deep into the game. When we come back, Fernando was not just a Dodger, and that was, like I said, that was a year that helped shape my fandom in baseball. He was also, I think, one of the ultimate cautionary tales in the sport of baseball. He's one of the players that you could point to as being important in the evolution of Major League Baseball. We're going to talk about that and his time as a San Diego Padre, which is especially meaningful and will help any Padre fan listening this to come around if you feel icky celebrating a Dodger, even one that pitched, probably before you were born in the cases of most, or when you were a kid in the cases of others. We will talk about Fernando Valenzuela as a Padre, too. Coming up also in the hour, some contract projections are out there for free agents, including our San Diego Padres, and we will get into those as we move forward. It's Braden and Craig here on Annie and Elsten, rolling until 2 o'clock, San Diego's #1 sports station, 97.3 The Fan. Welcome back, 1021 on The Fan. It's the Annie and Elsten program here with you. San Diego's number one sports station, 97.3 The Fan. Craig Elsten, Braden Soprano. No Annie today. She'll be back tomorrow, and we look forward to speaking with her then. Rafi Cantor from Padres Hot Tub joining me at the top of the hour, talking a little bit about Fernando Valenzuela passing away, just 63 years old. Obviously, speaking as a 52-year-old, it's not cool. Like to see that age go up a little bit higher than that. Went far too young as far as I'm concerned. I'm sure as far as he's concerned as well. Giving you some just memories from my childhood because I really was thinking about it, like I said, after hearing this news, which came after the show was over yesterday, about how much Fernando Valenzuela did impact my becoming a baseball fan. And it wasn't like a specific reverence for him, although he was the star of those Dodgers teams when I was a young child. Growing up, there were multiple aspects to it. So I told you about Game 3 of the World Series. But here's another way, and I've got two, and then we're going to get to Fernando as a Padre, that he impacted me. First, one of the things that dawned on me becoming a smarter baseball fan as I got, to become a teenager and into college and so on and so forth, was the growing recognition in the sport that what managers were doing to starting pitchers was bad for starting pitchers, that it was hurting starting pitchers. Because, again, I grew up in the era of Jack Morris and Fernando and, name any 275-inning ace that you want, Oral Hershiser, so on and so forth. Fernando Valenzuela had his career destroyed by Tommy Lasorda, because Fernando was somebody that Tommy could count on. And so he did. He just kept him out there, absolutely no matter what. Age 20, 192 innings in 25 starts. Like I said, it was a shorter season. After that, listen to this, Braden. 285, 257, 261, 272, 269, 251. Those were Fernando's innings pitch totals from 1982 to 1987.
Nobody even comes close to pitching that many innings this day and age.
No one pitches 200.
I know.
Like, no one pitches 200 innings in the big leagues. For him, 250 was like the minimum that he would do. Complete games, 11, 18, 9, 12, 14, 20, 12. 20 to lead the league. 20 complete games in 1986, throwing 269 innings. He would regularly face over 1,100 batters in a season. Just ludicrous numbers and completely alien to modern baseball. Why is it alien to modern baseball? Why don't they throw the way they used to? Well, guess what happened? Fernando Valenzuela's shoulder gave out. Is that shocking after I told you those innings pitch totals?
It's not shocking.
Of course it's not. Now, these days, it would have been the elbow that would have gone.
Yeah, he'd be throwing like 1,000 sliders.
Right. He was throwing screwballs, but it was Fernando's shoulder that gave out purely to overuse. And he missed over 2 months of the Dodgers World Series season, 1988, because of shoulder trouble. And then he came back because here's the thing. Fernando really never fixed that shoulder. It got hurt in 1988. He kept pitching till 1997, but it was really never the same. He never really came back to be the pitcher that he once was, but he kept posting up. He kept posting up, and he kept posting up. Last memory of this, and I promise I'm leaving my childhood, because this was truly a night that made me part of the crazy baseball fan that I am. Not just a fan, but a crazy fan. Going to tell you about June 3rd, 1989, Braden. I was over at my buddy Jake's house with my other buddy Sean, guys, with best man at my wedding, Sean, many years later. We were playing Stratomatic baseball, and it just so happened that the Dodgers game against the Astros was on television that night. Not all the games were on television.
Right.
At that time, but this one was on Channel 11. And June 3rd, 1989, the Dodgers and the Astros got going and kept going and kept going and kept going. They played a 22-inning game, the longest game in National League history. And we watched that as late as I possibly could be up, and then I went home, and the game was still on. And I finished watching the game at my parents' house because this was summer into my senior year in high school, right? The game went so long that Fernando, who had pitched the game before, he had thrown 114 pitches the prior day, so they weren't going to pitch him. Instead, Tommy Lasorda pitched Oral Hershiser, who had pitched 3 days before and had him, 2 days before, and had him throw 7 innings out of the bullpen. Unsurprisingly, he had shoulder surgery at the end of the 1989 season. Nonetheless, in that game, and I'll never forget it the rest of my life, in the 21st inning, the Dodgers literally couldn't pitch Hershiser anymore. They had no pitchers at all. And they put their third baseman, Jeff Hamilton, on the mound. And when they did that, they put their first baseman, Hall of Famer Eddie Murray, at third base, and they put Fernando at first base. And Fernando was the first baseman the last 2 innings of the game.
That's awesome.
Because here's the thing that, again, if you didn't know him in the day, you might not know. Fernando Valenzuela was a really good hitter. Like, he was a good hitter. He hit 200 for his career, which, for a starting pitcher,
That's pretty good.
it's pretty dang good. He had homers in 4 straight seasons during those All-Star years. In 1984, he hit 3 homers in a season. So, he was an okay hitter. In fact, his final year for the Dodgers, he hit 304. That's one of those things you could use on the Immaculate Grid one day. If you need a Dodger in a 300 season, you could put in Fernando and it'll work. So they put Fernando at first base. And I was going out of my mind, in ecstasy watching this game just because it was so crazy. A game, how can a 9-inning game be in the 22nd inning? How can that be a thing? It's literally, it can't be a thing in modern baseball anymore.
No, there's too many Manfred mans.
You'll never experience in your life a game like that. I was happy enough in a weird way to experience the longest Padres game in history at Petco Park, many, many years later. And I was remembering that 1989 game while I was there watching Russ Swan and shut out the Padres in the 20th inning and so on and so forth. But in that game, literally, the ball went off Fernando's glove at first base.
Oh, no.
For what wound up being the game-winning run, like a line drive that he tried to jump. And if they had just left Eddie Murray there, it would have been fine.
Right.
But because it ticked off his glove, it slowed down, and that allowed Billy Doran to come around and score. Yes, GH619, that Rockies game, I was there. And so that game, it was seared in my memory. It's one of those things no. I watched the 22-inning game. I'm not just a baseball fan. I'm an insane maniac,
We like to call that a sicko.
Sicko, yeah. I was a sicko.
It's
Baseball
sicko committee for college football.
Made me a sicko.
You're on the baseball sicko committee.
Made me a sicko. All right, I'm going to tie this to last storybook memory. This is later now, 1996. Fernando has already been drummed out of baseball. He finished his career with the Dodgers by getting lit up. He went to the Angels. He pitched for 4 games to a 12 ERA. And then he just disappeared to Mexico, where he continued to pitch.
He's out there pitching.
Because Fernando would just keep pitching. And then he reemerged in the Philadelphia bullpen in 1994. He reemerged in the Philadelphia bullpen. And then in 1995, he came to the Padres as a reliever that eventually became a spot starter. And in 1996, at age 35, he won the 5th starter's job for the San Diego Padres and put together the last good year of his major league career. He was a really important part of that 1996 team. He started 31 games. He won 13 games, ERA of 3.6, perfectly good.
Yes. It'd be great in this day and age anyway.
Right. I mean, honestly, he pitched kind of a full season of what Matt Waldron did for a summer.
Right.
You know what I mean? 171 innings. Listen, he bobbed and weaved. 177 hits allowed, 67 walks. He only struck out 95, but that was the thing about Fernando. He would always bob and weave. He'd give up a hit. He walked guys all the time. He led the league in walks multiple years, walked 110 batters in a season once. Like, he walked everybody, but he would never give in. He would always be waiting for that weaker matchup that he knew he could exploit somewhere, like a real thinking man's pitcher. And in 1996, he was the ultimate version of that because he had no stuff anymore.
Trying to find his 3 outs per inning.
Trying to find his 3 outs, trying to figure out his way to get through the game. So that brings me to August 16th, 1996. Because August 16th, 1996, the Padres played in Monterrey, Mexico. And it was a real regular season series against the New York Mets, and played in this mile-high stadium, tiny little stadium. But it was Fernando Valenzuela's opportunity to pitch in Mexico as a big leaguer.
Yes.
For the first time in his career.
Did he throw out the first pitch, too?
And then he proceeded to be vintage Fernando.
That's awesome.
And you wouldn't know this if you just went and looked at the box score. Because if you went and looked at the box score, you'd see 6 innings, 6 hits, 3 runs earned, 4 walks, 3 strikeouts. And you'd say, okay, he had kind of a whatever game. Fernando was leading 15-0 going to the 7th inning in this game. He was bobbing and weaving again. He was leaving guys on base. He's getting double plays. He's getting strikeouts, flyouts when he needs it. He was working. He was sweating. The famous eyes to the air on every pitch. He had one of the most unique windups in the history of baseball. That's another thing I always grew up loving, Braden, was unique windups of pitchers. How every pitcher didn't throw the same way. How some guys had a twirl with their hands and other guys twisted at their hips and high leg kick, low leg kick, slide step, like
Jake Peavy over the head.
Yeah, I loved all that
stuff
stuff,
is fun.
man. I would be in the backyard throwing paper balls, like trying to emulate or just ruining our brick wall, throwing a baseball against the brick wall in the backyard, trying to emulate different windups, But you could never emulate Fernando's because he took his eyes off the target.
Right.
Every single time he took his eyes off the target. But that day, August 16th, he left the mound leading 15-1. The Padres bullpen proceeded to give up everything, and it was 15-10, the final score.
Oh, my God.
But he still got the win.
That's right.
He still got the win. It was his 10th win of the season, but it was one of the most magical moments in a spectacular career for a man who was overused, becomes a poster boy later in his career for pitcher overuse, something that radically changed over the course of my lifetime. And also as this old punter just out there grinding, sweating, fighting his way to get there. It's 31 starts for that team, and if he doesn't win 13 games, they don't win the National League West.
No, they probably don't. Big contributing factor for the Padres, and obviously it's just in Southern California baseball lore up in Los Angeles, and great that some of our Padres fans get to watch him pitch here in a Padres uniform. But what a remarkable career that Fernando Valenzuela had.
It was truly something special, and like I said, these are things that were part of the building blocks of my fandom, of my obsession with baseball. Of how the sport has evolved in my lifetime. And like Fernando was just a great guy to point to for all of that. He didn't make the Hall of Fame. He would have been a Hall of Famer if he hadn't had his career destroyed by overuse. And by the way, Adam in the chat, he did not pitch that last weekend in L.A. I know that's something they chatted about in the morning show. I went and looked it up. His last start that year was against Colorado. So he was not on the mound that final weekend for the San Diego Padres when they swept in L.A., but he was in the dugout, that's for sure. And Fernando, just an indelible imprint on Major League Baseball. So a little bit of memory lane there, and, Annie's not here, so a little space to indulge me to be a bit of a storyteller. But back then, such an important player, and people can't even understand what 1981 was like with Fernando Mania, with that truly being a thing, with at a time when you couldn't watch as a country, the whole country would want to watch Fernando starts. Like there'd be How can you find out more? And so not everyone could watch. So then it was almost like this legend that was being born. Did you hear what he did this time? Another shutout, another complete game, so on and so forth. And the first game that my dad took me to was a Fernando Valenzuela start. And, we were in the upper deck at Dodger Stadium because it was pretty hard to get tickets for those games. Okay, when we come back, how about a little college talk? Because I just love talking college sports with Braden. And SDSU, a little bit of a change to the NIL tournament that they're playing in. I think it's a great change as far as San Diego State's basketball season is concerned. Plus, the Mountain West Conference has regrets. And I can't blame them at all. We'll talk about that. Rafi Cantor from Padres Hot Tub, top of the hour. This is Andy and Elsten right here on San Diego's #1 sports station, 97.3 The Fan. 10:43 on the Fan. Welcome back, everybody. Annie and Elsten here with you. Craig Elsten, Braden Soprano. No Annie Halbrin today. She will be back tomorrow. Spent a couple of segments talking about Fernando Valenzuela's passing at the too young age of 63. Moving on to the Padres at 11 when Rafi joins me and we talk through the subject of the most tradable assets this offseason for the San Diego Padres, from the obvious to the sneaky, to trying to figure out, could any of the big money deals possibly ever be moved? Probably not. We'll talk about all of that with Rafi Cantor from Padres Hot Tub coming up at 11. This was one of those stories, and this is, by the way, the lot of a sports radio host, as I've learned, which is that on Monday, you're given the opportunity to talk about like 22 things.
Yes.
But you have 12 segments. So you're not going to talk about 22 things in 12 segments because you don't have enough time to give many of the things their due. And then quite often something will fall into Tuesday. But then a lot of the things you meant to talk about on Monday, by Wednesday, you still haven't talked about them. And this is one of those things. This came out over the weekend. Good article from Mark Ziegler, who went to Mountain West Conference Media Day. And naturally, there's some bitter folk in the Mountain West Conference. And for good reason, right? They feel blindsided by the cohort of San Diego State and Boise State, Fresno State et al. That jumped up and left Colorado State, the fourth, that jumped up and left to go to the Pac-2 and turn it at that point into the six-pack. It was something that was done, behind closed doors, in the quiet. Mountain West folks feel blindsided, but that was, according to San Diego State officials, kind of the way it had to be. Adela De La Torre, the president of San Diego State, in this article was quoted saying, I would say within that context, we have to maintain our decision-making within a confidential manner. I don't think it's like other business deals where they're offering me this. Hey, what are you going to give me? This is really how presidents operate. You have to understand the constraints we live in. We did what we thought was important, and we got the job done. Well, here's the thing. And you and I have talked about this a lot, Braden. I don't know if we are on the majority opinion of folks who are following this. I think a lot of San Diego State fans really, really want to believe that the move to the Pac-12 is the right move. I think on the basketball side, it probably is. But there's no question in my mind that the thing that you're hearing from these head coaches, whether it's Tim Miles up at San Jose State or whether it's Patino in New Mexico, is that, honestly, they're going to be better if they're all together. They could have found a way to try and be another mega conference. Now you've got two half conferences, and the question of the viability of either of those conferences is real.
It is real, and the other thing, too, you're starting, we talked about this during the break, about just the bottom of the barrel that they're right now is trying to scrape to put together a conference and enough schools in the conferences to make it count as a distinguished conference in the NCAA. You need at least 8 full-time members, and some of these conferences have some part-time members. I think they've elected to add Hawaii to the Mountain West as a full-time member because they're in the Big West for everything except for football. Football is in the Mountain West, so I think that's one of them back. And now they're thinking about adding, Grand Canyon as a full member, but they don't have football, and they're still talking to NIU and Toledo to join the Mountain West in football, which makes zero sense whatsoever. And then you look at the Pac, and the Pac's like, oh, we added Gonzaga, everything's going to be great, but even with that, you start looking at, what they potentially could get. And I guess I still think it's fool's gold and a fool's errand to talk about their negotiations they're going to have with TV contracts with everybody already, and we've talked about this before, not wanting to dish out these gigantic media rights deals, the ESPNs, the Foxes, the CBS, the NBCs. The only kind of entities that would like to do that are places like Apple TV and maybe Amazon. But you look at Fresno State, Washington State. They played each other 2 weekends ago, if I'm not mistaken. 2 weekends ago.
Uh-huh.
Their television ratings were like 200,000 people tuned into that game.
Right.
It's like that in the new Pac-12 is probably one of their best matchups they could possibly have. Their best matchup is probably Boise State, Washington State, because you have the former Pac-12 Power 5 member. You got the best, at least in football, out of the group joining the Pac-12 in Boise State. They got the close rivalry. That had 500,000 people tuned into it. That's their best game.
Right.
How much money do you think these TV networks are going to dish out? And I have to continue to remind Aztec fans, stop being delusional on drinking your own Kool-Aid and surrounding yourself with just like-minded people on the whole sense of, like, this is going to be the greatest thing ever, and we're a power conference. I mean, just in the realm of looking at TV numbers, Washington State, Boise State, who got 500,000 people, was great. The Big 12 game that they were paired up against was like Utah and Arizona or something like that. They had like 1.5 million people tune into their game. And that was one of the lower level games of that day. I mean, you could look back to a couple weeks ago with Washington State, Fresno State. They said they had 200,000 people tuned in. I know it was on a Friday night, the night before, but they got outdrew by an Ivy League game of Harvard and like Columbia outdrew that game. So what kind of contract do you think these TV companies are going to dish out? They're just going to give it to you just because you say you're a power conference. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me when you could have just kept everything the same, added Washington State and Oregon State, made a deal where you're one conference and figure out who was in charge and who wasn't, and then add a couple other teams on the borders. Maybe you add Gonzaga to that. All of a sudden, you got a legit chance at being a conference that is definitely the best of the group of six or whatever it is now. But I can see why the Mountain West is kind of at a crossroads right now. Now it's an arms race between two conferences pitted against each other that if they united probably would have been in a better spot.
And that's just the point that they were making at the media day. I think this is a salient quote. There's a reason that Mark Ziegler put it at the top of his piece. This is Richard Pitino, New Mexico's basketball coach. Quote, "It pisses me off if I'm being honest. I can't understand why we're breaking up. We could have done all this in the Mountain West. I really believe that. Now, you can say I'm bitter because we got left out. There is a little truth to that for sure. But I don't know why Boise State, Colorado State, San Diego State, and Fresno State couldn't have done this in conference. I would have thought, how do we work together to work this thing out? It turned into Game of Thrones all of a sudden, where everybody was stabbing everybody else in the back. I'm very disappointed in it because I felt like we should have been the marquee conference in the West. I felt like this is a no-brainer to work together." And that's where I have to agree.
I agree
with Richard Pitino. You know, and the thing that the Mountain West was the most upset about is that these four schools didn't go back to the Mountain West and say, look, Pac-2 is offering this. What are we going to do? Should we take this, or can you offer? Can you counter? How do we make this better? Because if the Mountain West had held firm, Oregon State and Washington State would have had no choice but to come into the Mountain West, right?
100%.
All they had to have done was hold the alliance, so to speak, and there's no room for them to go anywhere else. Now, do you want to at that point talk about branding? Is it really about the logo on the building? Is that what it's about? The logo on the field, the fact that they don't like the M and the W and the snow-capped mountains, and they prefer the shield of the Pac-12. Is it really as simple as a logo?
I think it is for a lot of Aztec fans. I mean, I don't understand. And, and Sam in the chat, full share Pac versus half share anywhere else. But if the half share is worth more than the full share, it makes no sense. And don't give me this BS like we'd be at a disadvantage. You signed up to be at a disadvantage in basketball by giving Gonzaga a full share when they don't have football to spend it on.
Yeah.
You're seriously signing up for the exact same thing that you were afraid of potentially joining any other conference. You're hung up with full and half instead of the price of what both of it is. It makes no sense. This entire thing makes no sense. You can put lipstick on a pig as much as you want, but that's what it is. That's what this entire situation is. It makes zero sense. They could have had a united Western Conference, and instead you got the Mountain West 2.0 in the Pac whatever it is, and you have the WAC 2.0 with the new Mountain West Conference, and both of them are going to be lousy, and both of them aren't going to get money in TV contracts, and it's not going to be what they think it's going to be. I understand from a couple of perspectives of, like, we have to, like, survive, so you have to be in a spot to survive, but I just thought it was a panic move by everybody in this sense, and I really think the fact that other schools in other conferences have turned down invites shows you everything you need to know, because, again, we're going to go through this entire process of them trying to find a TV contract that they're never going to get to the money that they think they are worth, and it's not going to end well.
Going forward, these institutions are going to be competing against one another. They're going to try to get the same TV deal. They're going to talk to the same brokers and try to be the first in on a deal. They're going to try to talk to sponsors and be the first in on a sponsor within the region. And the net result of this is that the Mountain West has no choice but to root for the Pac-12 to fail. And the Pac-12 has no choice but to root for the Mountain West to fail. Because ultimately, both sides want the other to die so that then the living conference can pick from the bones of the dead conference and create the thing that, if everyone worked together, they could have created in the first place.
I don't know what they're doing. I still don't know what they're doing. I remember they were like, hey, just wait for all these teams we're going to add. They added Gonzaga, and Gonzaga fleeced them.
And that's that. Yeah, next, Grand Canyon.
Yeah, sick, dude.
Texas, San Antonio. They said no.
They already said no.
They said no. All right, when we come back, we say yes to some Padres talk. Rafi Cantor joins me from Padres Hot Tub. What are the most tradable assets for A.J. Preller this winter? We'll get into it next. Back with you for hour number 2 of the program. Welcome back, everybody. It's your midday hang. It's Annie and Elsten on San Diego's #1 sports station, 97.3 The Fan. Annie Heilbrunn is off today and will return to the show tomorrow. Craig Elsten here with you. Braden Soprenet alongside in our Odyssey studios overlooking sunny Murphy Canyon. Beautiful, warm day once again. Kind of our Indian summer here in San Diego. Love how we cling to the heat, cling to the light. Even though it does have the allergies a little worked up. Nonetheless, beautiful day here in America's finest city. We're going to talk some Padres baseball within the course of this hour. It's not an official Padres deep dive hour. Season's over. Nonetheless, we're going to take a deep dive into the San Diego Padres. So however you call it, it remains the same, and I'm happy to be joined right now on the hotline to help me do so. To the co-host of the Padres Hot Tub Podcast, Rafi Cantor, making a repeat appearance here on the Annie and Elsten program. Rafi, how you doing, my friend? How are you today?
I'm all right, Craig. I'm also glad to hear that I'm not alone in the allergies being acted up by the Santa Anas. There's a fantastic essay by Joan Didion about the Santa Anas I encourage everyone to read. But basically, it is the weather of chaos. And the season of chaos is upon us, and I look forward to inflicting some chaos on the Padres' potential 2025 roster with you, Craig.
I'm writing this down. Joan Didion.
Yeah, Joan Didion on 97.3 The Fan. What do you think about that?
Didion, Santa Ana wins. Okay, because I've dealt with these my entire life. I literally get, you can hear it in my voice, sniffles, everything else, every time, my entire life, the Santa Ana wins. But we digress. Okay. Obviously, it's the offseason. We can go a billion different directions. But I presented to you this morning, Rafi, and to the audience, a prompt that I figure we can chew on like a dog on a bone for a little bit here. We start with a premise, right? We talked about this at length on yesterday's show, Rafi, the Padres' debts and obligations, the players who are going to be paid more this year to do the same thing for the San Diego Padres, the players in arbitration for the team, and the realization that from a salary cap luxury tax standpoint, the Padres are, depending on who you look at, either 10 away or butting right up against the salary tax number already for 2025. So as an establishing premise, A.J. Preller either needs to have Daddy Warbucks open up the purse strings, or he has to be creative again this winter.
Yeah, we talked about going into 2024 that the Padres were really keen on resetting the luxury tax basically for this reason. I mean, one of the things that we've talked about on Padres Hot Tub that's specifically so hard, frankly, and gut-wrenching about the way that this season ended is that the Padres' financial contract situation basically just gets more difficult to navigate every season. We have players like Manny and Xander and Fernando Tatis Jr., Joe Musgrove, Yu Darvish, all on long-term deals. And, every year that passes, these guys get older and, their financial obligations stay the same from a competitive balance tax standpoint, but from an actual payroll standpoint, increase every season. So, as the Padres look to retool and regear for 2025, that financial tightrope act that the team has been playing over the course of the last several seasons actually just gets a little bit higher degree of difficulty, and so some difficult decisions are going to need to be made, Craig.
Last year, when the Padres had to cut $100 million from the payroll, they had the golden goose that they were able to move in Juan Soto, one of the most tradable assets that you could possibly have, one of the most tradable assets in big league history. And you see what the Padres got for just a year guaranteed of his service last winter. San Diego does not have that golden goose to trade this winter. But what could they have? Here's what we're going to do, Rafi and I, over the course of this discussion, which I don't know if it'll take the whole hour or not. We've got commercials to play as well. But we're going to start with the most obvious thing, and then we're going to work through some of the less obvious and maybe less savory options that A.J. Preller could potentially pursue in this winter. But I did want to start at the top because I think there's a lot of Padres fans, Rafi, that have a damn the torpedoes attitude toward the franchise, meaning like, let's win now, right? And I think whether you agree with it or not, there's at least a logical argument that can be made that the best opportunity this core group of the Padres will have to win is 2025, and that after that, year over year, the aging of those core players that you talked about on the long-term contracts is going to make it harder and harder to compete.
Yeah, I mean, I think, like, excuse me, let's just be honest. It will make it harder. It doesn't make it impossible, and I think depending on the type of fan that you are, you know, we tend to say bloomer or doomer over in our neck of the woods on Padres Hot Tub. You know, you can interpret that based on, you know, your own fan perspective and determine, oh, the team, it's, you know, it's completely screwed. They're not going to be able to do, you know, anything in terms of their flexibility. Or you can look at it and say, look, we've got the veteran leadership. AJ Preller has been, you know, an absolute master at drafting and basically every 2 to 3 seasons completely restocking the farm system. And when we've been told that, well, no, like we're completely tapped out at the minor league level, goes and pulls a trade deadline like he did this year and brings in bullpen pieces that were critical in getting us to the point that we got to in the late stages of the season. So, I think we just need to be honest and say it will have a higher degree of difficulty. It does not mean that it's 2025 or bust, in my opinion.
And me neither, but continuing down that road, I do believe a reasonable percentage of the audience, probably not a plurality, but maybe a reasonable percentage of the audience, would be of the mind of saying, let's trade the most obvious thing that we can trade this winter. We have 2 incredibly highly rated young prospects, teenage prospects, in Ethan Salas and Leo Dallas DeVries. And would we agree that if you did decide to trade those guys, sky's the limit in terms of what you could get? Not Soto, though, right? You still wouldn't be able to get a Soto return for one of those guys. Or would you?
Oh, no, absolutely not. You know, I think it's worth, I'll try as brief as I can. You know, this is the stuff I love. But just talk about the way that teams value prospects. And they value them based on a future projected value. And that is production that they make on the field that is then equated to a dollar figure, essentially. And it's a way that you can help compare minor league talent with major league talent who you know what you're paying them with a dollar figure, and you compare that against their potential production on the field. And we talked about this all the time on Padres Hot Tub. You know, when we did, we looked at both Soto trades, the trade that brought him to San Diego and the trade that sent him away from San Diego. When you stacked up the prospect capital and the on-field major league talent that was being sent either way, you actually saw like quite similar dollar values when you use the conversions that major league teams use to look at. So Ethan Salas right now, according to Fangraphs, is their number 7 overall prospect. He's obviously the best prospect in the farm system for the Padres. He's rated as a 60 future value on the 20/80 scale. What that means in terms of dollar value is that he's worth about $55 million in terms of projected value. To give you a sense of what, you know, one WAR of production, for instance, is usually rated between $8 and $9 million. So if the Padres were to trade away Ethan Salas at $55 million, you know, they'd be looking for about 6 or 7 wins above replacement in return. That's the way that that the team would look at, you know, an Ethan Salas type figure in terms of the production that they need back. So, you know, we're looking ahead to 2025. What's the thing, the most glaring hole that was ripped through the Padres roster during the final weeks of the playoffs?
Joe Musgrove's elbow, yeah.
Exactly. And so they're going to need to replace, you know, a top-line starter this year. And Ethan Salas could get you, you know, a year or, you know, potentially 2 years, depending on what he's being paid, of a really good starter. Or he could get you, you know, multiple, maybe number 3, number 4 type arms, again, depending on if you're willing to pay them. The catch here, and this is part of the tightrope act that we're walking, is if you were to trade Ethan Salas, you'd almost undoubtedly be taking on salary for whatever major league talent that you're bringing in. And the Padres literally have negative room to bring that on. So any conversation about trading Ethan Salas, Craig, I think needs to start and almost end with, okay, but what about the financial commitment?
That's a great point. And even if you're getting younger, more affordable players, like you said, you're still adding, no matter what, to the bottom line. I think it's going to be very, very, very hard for the Padres to stay under the luxury tax in 2025. Okay, but so, all right, so we're saying if you traded a Salas, if you traded a DeVries, if you traded both of them, you could get back 14, 15 WAR of value. That's not nothing for sure. I'm
going to quibble. I just want to, Craig, DeVries is rated a little bit lower than Salas. Some places have him, as a 50 value. I think that will be updated after the at Fangraphs after the fall league.
Sure.
MLB Pipeline has him at 55, which would bring his value, up to, $46 million, you could say. So depending on, which system you use, but I would say 10, let's say 10 WAR. Let's say 10 to 12 WAR as a more comfortable range.
Okay. And that would certainly upgrade the 2025 Padres. And it's already a good team, so there's a lot of potential short-term excitement if you made moves like that, understanding that it would almost undoubtedly take you over, as you astutely pointed out, take you over the line. Now, what's the downside of that? I think the downside is pretty obvious, right? The Padres are counting on these guys to have a Merrill-sized impact on the franchise in the second half of the decade. And if you delete that, now you are a much more expensive team, and you don't have a plan for 2026 and beyond other than shrug, hope we're good, hope that 35-year-olds have career years, and that's not much of a plan.
No, and this is why, and I hope this isn't cutting into our segment, but I really just don't think that this is going to happen, because the Padres, think about what Jackson Merrill is providing to the Padres this year. Not only is he providing them, 5 WAR approximately, which makes him, I believe, the biggest contributor on the team, in terms of like actual value that was put out. I'm just tracking my numbers. Yeah, but by more than a whole win. Jurickson Profar was second with 4.3. Merrill was at 5.3. But he's also doing it at a cost of $750,000.
Right.
And so, we always talk about like, oh my God, Jurickson Profar, what an amazing year. And he did it on this, nothing contract that was incentive laden and everything. But like, Jackson Merrill is going to make, a quarter to a sixth of what Jurickson Profar makes, depending on, how the incentives lay out. So, that value that he is providing is critical. And I think as part of the, 5-year plan of this franchise, 10-year plan of this franchise, because that's how long some of these players are still going to be with the team is 10 years from now. They are absolutely reliant on people like Ethan Salas and Leodalis DeVries to come in and provide, value at a unbeatable price point. And so I frankly don't see how the Padres, just in terms of the way that, AJ Preller and Eric Rupner and like other people we've heard from the team talk about the team and talk about the team's finances, I don't see them operating in the future without people like Salas or DeVries as those contributors. I'm not saying it's going to be them, because who's to say at this point? I've been a fan of this team long enough to know that any trade is on the board, but they're going to need players like them to be contributing to them, Craig.
No, I think, listen, we're in complete accord here, and that's why I wanted to put it first, because I think it would be the single worst idea that the Padres could do this winter is to trade Salas and DeVries. This is your gateway to a competitive second half of the decade. And if you want to close that gateway and seal it in concrete, you can trade those two guys. And is there risk in the concurrent path of just hanging on to them and hoping that they fulfill that value? Yeah, there's always risk. There's always attendant risk in promoting, developing, and then installing a player out of your system. But if anything, Merrill shows you how the ultimate upside of that can work out. The Padres almost have no choice. They have similarly, fingered Salas and DeVries, identified them, labeled them as such players, so they need to let that play out. Okay, Rafi, let's take a quick time out. When we come back on Annie and Elsten, we will go from that obvious move, drain the left, what's left of the farm, to some of the more complicated moves that A.J. Preller could consider. Which of the arbitration-eligible players could he consider moving away from as opposed to paying more to going into 2025? We'll get into that and some maybe sneaky choices as the hour continues. It's Annie and Elsten. We're talking about possible Padres trades right here on your home of Padres baseball, 97.3 The Fan. Baseball coverage on 97.3 The Fan, presented by T-Mobile. Head to T-Mobile.com and get a great deal on an iPhone 16 Pro. We're talking baseball with you on Annie and Elsten. Annie Halbrin off today. Rafi Cantor, co-host of the Padres Hot Tub podcast, is joining me on the telephone as we go through some of the tradable assets for the San Diego Padres going into this winter. The team's right up against it in terms of the luxury tax. They have a number of players who are heading to arbitration and therefore about ready to get a little bit more expensive. So in our first segment, Rafi, we talked about the finishing off of draining the farm, the opportunity to potentially trade Ethan Salas, Leo DeVries. We both agree not only a bad idea, but probably just not going to happen. Let's look at the arbitration guys here. The Padres have a number of players who are going to get more expensive this season. Padres famously don't go to arbitration. Under A.J. Preller, they've never gone to arbitration. They will come to deals with these players. That's the closest thing I can give you to a guarantee if they stay on the team. But Luis Arraez, who the Marlins paid his entire contract to, is due a raise. Some of the projections say around $14.5 million for Luis Arraez next year. Dylan Cease expected to go into 8 figures. Michael King expected to at least get to maybe $7-8 million, similar to what Dylan Cease was at this year. Jason Adam probably goes up, probably sees his salary double. Adrian Morejon is also arbitration eligible. Do you see a move here for AJ involving any of these players?
Gosh. Do I see a move? Yes. I see a move that is certainly possible. I think where you look at where the Padres' devoted, allocated contracts are, we have quite a good number of them in the infield with Manny Machado, Xander Bogaerts, and Jacob Cronenworth. So, obviously that glaring hole at shortstop with the expected departure of Ha-Seong Kim, comes to mind in terms of how they're going to fill it and what's potentially in the plans for that. But I think of all the players that you just listed, and I think Luis Arraez is probably the biggest candidate to be moved, simply because of the fact that the Padres have such a need for pitching and for because there are some other potential interesting trade options that we'll get to later in the show. But Luis Arraez, according to Fangraphs, is estimated to be paid $14.6 million. Now, Arraez is probably, in the modern Moneyball era, one of the most difficult players to assess their value, in my opinion. So, for instance, we talked about the excellent years of Jackson Merrill and Jurickson Profar earlier in the show. They put up 5.3 and 4.3 F-WAR respectively. Incredibly, all-star seasons, incredibly valuable. Luis Arraez this season had, put up, I'm just going to, put it out there, 1.1 WAR, according to Fangraphs. And you might be thinking, wait, but this guy is a batting champion. He's a .314 hitter on the season. How could it be that Luis Arraez is, basically a fifth of the value that Jackson Merrill is, according to, these modern statistics? Well, that's for a couple of reasons. One, Luis Arraez doesn't slug at all. He has 392 slug, which with a 314 batting average and a 346 on base is kind of impressive. And he does that while he's playing mostly first base or a designated hitter. So providing either incredibly little defensive value or literally zero defensive value to the team. Compare that to someone like Jackson Merrill, who is slugging quite a bit, slugging 500 to be exact, while also playing center field, a premium defensive position that, oh, by the way, rarely has guys who are slugging anywhere close to 500 playing it. So he provides you a lot of surplus value. You're getting slug from Jackson Merrill in a place you don't normally get it. With Luis Arraez, you're not getting slug from a place that you do normally get it. So that's why it's incredibly difficult to assess his value, because also he's a batting champion. And as we've discussed many times, the virtue of getting walks and getting on base has been discussed ad nauseum in the Moneyball era, but also getting a base hit, especially with men aboard, much, much, much more valuable than walking when the furthest you can move someone is one base. And that's if it's a force. So I think the Padres are going to have to look at their current commitments, the plan for shortstop. We've heard whispers about would they move Merrill to shortstop, would they move Tatis back to shortstop. I don't know that I would really endorse either of those ideas. But if that is the plan, then all of a sudden Luis Arraez is either going to have to be your designated hitter, which I don't know if that's prudent either, or he doesn't have a spot on the team. So I think out of all the players listed, Luis Arraez would be the most likely to be dealt given the financial contribution and his potential on-field impact.
Well, I agree. He's probably the most likely to be dealt. And I'm also going to not completely agree, but somewhat agree, or at least present the counter argument that the fans on the chat, on our YouTube chat, are presenting in terms of why you'd want to hang on to Luis Arraez, right? I mean, he definitely has a huge impact on this team. We had Ben Clemens from Fangraphs on Annie and Elsten last week, and he made the point that Luis was a reduced version of himself in 2024. I think you can point to the thumb injury as being a direct contributing cause, and that being a very reasonable conclusion. So you could further conclude that at age 28 next year, he could get back to being closer to a 340 hitter, regain some of that doubles power. He once hit 10 homers in a season. Could get some of that slug back. That helps. Could be a heightened version of himself compared to what we saw in 2024, and that if you could find a way to get him at a reasonable rate going forward, maybe he'd be the kind of player you could sign to a deal that wouldn't necessarily maximize his market value, that there's reasons you'd want to hang on to Luis Arraez. But the one thing I do keep bumping against and coming back to is something you brought up, which is the positional opportunity cost. The fact that when you have Cronenworth and you have Bogarts and you have Machado, then if you sign Arraez, he has to play first or he has to be DH, and that's preventing you from ever getting a power-hitting first baseman / DH for your team for the next however X many years.
Yeah, no, exactly. And I mean, when you think about Luis Arraez in terms of where he was hitting, and I know you've talked about this, and this will be a topic of discussion. But he isn't your prototypical walks getter. I guess is not really good grammar, but forgive me. He only walked at a 3.1% clip at his time on the Padres. I want to contrast that with someone like Jurickson Profar, who we've also talked about in the leadoff spot, who walked 11.4% of the time. I want to contrast that with the soon-to-be departed Ha-Seong Kim, who, wasn't the picture of offensive production during his, time here, even though he certainly improved as an offensive producer. He walked 12.3% of the time this season. I don't know that Profar or Kim certainly would have made a better, leadoff hitter, but the matter of the fact is what Arraez provides is batting average, and where batting average, I think, provides value as opposed to on-base percentage is further down the lineup when ideally you have men on base who can move up from first to third or from second to home, which we know that the Padres are incredibly adept at. So, in terms of looking to where the team can potentially improve as it goes, forward to 2025, this is a team who, ranked 7th in the league in terms of slugging. It's not like they didn't hit for power. I mean, there was a 3-month period where Petco Park was the surface of the moon for some inexplicable reason. So that was part of it. But, for a team that leads in batting average, in the league, to only be sixth in on-base percentage and seventh in slug. I think that there's some opportunity there. And, when you're not getting power from those power positions that you expect, first base, being kind of the chief among them when you think about your prototypical power hitter, you're going to have to make it up in other places around the field. So that is the limit that Arias provides you.
All right, real quick before we wrap up this segment, Rafi, let's just look at the two big starting pitchers. I think it's difficult to, off the top of your head, imagine the Padres getting better trading Dylan Cease or getting better trading Michael King. Obviously, it always depends on what you get back, because we would have said the same thing about could you get better trading Juan Soto, and somehow, some way, the Padres did. Juan Soto's still a great player, but replacing 180, 190 innings of quality work is not easily done. A.J. Preller has been good at doing it, but is this a place where he could get creative and try and find the next reliever that they're going to convert into a starter? Make a bet against Michael King's arm in 2025 after taking that huge innings leap in 2024. I'm not personally very excited about either one of those, but it is something they have to at least consider, right?
To be honest, I'm going to just say I disagree. I think the whatever hope that the team had for trading Dylan Cease or Michael King to try and get some value back died when Joe Musgrove's elbow exploded.
Yeah, okay.
That's just where it's at. The team, you trade those guys. Okay, now you have two holes in the rotation.
Right. Right.
Go and fix it. And eventually you're just taking putty and putting it on the hull of the ship to try and spring the leaks. I don't think it's possible.
Yeah, I tend to agree. You'd have to get so creative and be getting another starter back that was less expensive, but that's why we talk about it on a deep divey type hour, is to try and figure out if it makes any sense. When we come back after this commercial timeout, Rafi sticks with us, and we'll get to maybe some of the sneakier places that A.J. Preller could look. I've certainly got a candidate here, and I know Rafi does as well, for maybe a sneaky trade that the Padres could make this winter. That part of the conversation after this quick timeout. Don't go anywhere. This is San Diego's #1 sports station, 97.3 The Fan. This hour on 97.3 The Fan is brought to you by Buffalo Wild Wings. Buffalo Wild Wings is football. Hey, San Diego sports fans, head to your local Buffalo Wild Wings and try their new Maple Chipotle sauce for rich maple sweetness and a mild, smoky Chipotle kick. Or check out the new Cajun sauce for a rich blend of spicy and tangy pepper sauce. Stop by your San Diego B-Dubs or order now for takeout and delivery. With Buffalo Wild Wings, go. Craig Elsten here with you with Braden Sopranet on Annie and Elsten. Annie is off today. She'll be back tomorrow. Rafi Cantor, one of the co-hosts of the Padres Hot Tub Podcast, joining me this hour as we go through the topic of tradable Padres assets for the 2024-25 winter. We talked early about the kids in the system. Last segment, we talked about the arbitration guys. Here, Rafi, let's get into maybe some sneakier players that A.J. Preller could consider trading this winter. And I wanted to start by nominating the closer of the Padres, Robert Suarez, as a possibility. Now, obviously, Suarez had a tremendous year for the San Diego Padres this season as closer. He made the All-Star team, and he is under contract. However, his contract does have an opt-out at the end of 2025. He's going to get paid $10 million in 2025. Then he's got an opt-out. And really, the numbers after that are cheaper for Suarez going forward. So I think as an entry to the discussion, Rafi, it's fair to say, isn't it, that if you keep Suarez and he's your closer in 2025, he's a free agent at the end of the season?
I wouldn't go be that certain because you could have a terrible 2025. His again, as we've said earlier on the show, his elbow could explode, and then okay, like what is he going to do? Is he really going to opt out during a year in which he would have to be rehabbing? I think there's a lot of factors. I think if he has a year similar to 2024, then I think that it's probably safe to assume that he is going to opt out after the 2025 season. I'll play ball on this one, and I'll make the case for why this trade makes sense. So if you were to get rid of Robert Suarez, you'd be looking at a bullpen of here are the known knowns, 6 guys who we are going to be paying who would most certainly make the bullpen in 2025. Jason Adam, Adrian Morejon, Jeremiah Estrada, Brian Hoeing, Yuki Matsui, and Wandy Peralta. Those are your 6. I don't know how you feel about those 6, but those are your 6. You also have guys like Sean Reynolds, or potentially, depending on how the team wants to deploy him, a Johnny Brito, if they want to convert him to a reliever. That's waiting in the wings to potentially be your, 7th option righty power arm. So I think it's a justifiable trade. I think the issue that you're going to run into is that it's not like Robert Suarez is super, super cheap. $10 million, even for an elite closer, is, still a good amount of money. And so I don't know that you'd be getting a ton of value for him coming back on the other side. So, if you were to trade Suarez, I don't know that it's really like for, prospect capital on the other side. I think it would really just be a salary dump, and it would have to be a team. And there are very few teams in baseball, unfortunately, because of the nature of the sport and owner greed, that are willing to take on a $10 million reliever contract. So you'd be looking basically exclusively at big market teams, who, want to try and make a splash and have an elite bullpen. So I think that the Suarez trade is justifiable. I just don't think there are that many teams. And when there's not as many teams, there's not as much demand, which means that the price is going to be lower than if he was an incredibly hot commodity. So those are the cases for or against, Craig.
Sure. And heard. I mean, first off, you do weaken the Padres. However, I think as you established well, I would go into a 2025 season thinking that those 6 guys you mentioned as the bedrock of a bullpen is probably a better base than the Padres had going into 2024. And they found their way to a dominant bullpen at the end of the year, but I will not forget the Stephen Kolek Johnny Brito moments along the way. Nonetheless, if you found, and that's why this is in the sneaky category, right? This requires Preller to find the right taker with the right system and with the right fit. Because it's probably, as you said, either getting assets that maybe you flip in a second trade to get something for your big league team, or it's something that's restocking the coffers in your farm system that you deleted out of the system in 2024 to build the team at the trade deadline. Neither of those necessarily make San Diego a better team on the field in 2025. However, if we're looking at you've got to cut some costs here or there. You've got to make a couple of pruning moves to allow you to make other moves. If that's the case, I would say Suarez is a place that you could prune without killing the team.
Yeah, and I want to throw it to you for your next pick because I think this one is really quite interesting.
All right. What about Jake Cronenworth?
Mm-hmm.
Jake Cronenworth is a player on a long-term contract. He made $7.2 million last year. It'll be 11.2 next year, then 12.2, 12.2, 12.2, 12.2, 12.2, all the way through 2030. He's about to turn 31 years old. He'll turn 31 years old this offseason. Jake just had a little bit of a bounce-back year. In fact, I'd say a lot bit of a bounce-back year. To the point, and maybe this is our entry to this discussion, is he back to being a player that would be valued on the market? Had 2 WAR last year based on what you described as the average cost per WAR at $12 million. He's a little bit of a bargain.
Yeah, he is. And, again, part of what, if Jake Cronenworth had played 100 and how many games did he play? 155 games this year. If he had played them all at second base and he hit the way that he hit and he fielded the way that he fielded, he'd be a 3-WAR player. Which is incredibly valuable for teams, and he'd be providing a lot of surplus value. The issue is that he played 85 games at first base, at which point, his bat, which is slugging less than 400, doesn't really make a lot of sense. He only played 70 games at second base this season. He DH'd 5 games, which, that's whatever. That's just getting him off his feet. But this goes back to how are the Padres going to align? And the difference between Luis Arraez, who's going to be getting paid $14.6 million and providing no defensive value. You can't put him at second base, essentially. Teams have tried that. It doesn't work. Padres have tried it. It didn't really work. You probably have to put him at first base or have him DH. Jake Cronenworth provides a ton of defensive value, and he provides defensive value at second base, which is a difficult defensive position. He can play the position really well. And so I think that there is an argument to be made that there is a team that's looking at Jake Cronenworth, and they have a big hole at second base, and they want Jake Cronenworth, who is, multiple-time All-Star, to come and be their everyday second baseman at a potentially controlled cost point. Not super controlled, which, again, that's worth saying. Jake Cronenworth, he's in this kind of Goldilocks spot where, $11, $12 million a year. If he produces a year like he had this year, very much worth it. If he has a year like 2023, that really is a tough pill to swallow if you're a team paying him $11, $12 million a year and he's, barely putting up 1 win. So I think Cronenworth is a compelling case to make for a potential trade. I still think because of the amount of time that he has tagged to him, it's going to be difficult. You're still looking at a $60 million plus commitment that a team would have to be making to trade for Jake Cronenworth. But I think it's probably the most interesting for the biggest number of teams, as opposed to, say, Suarez, who'd only be playing in the big market space.
Yeah, that's my thought as well, is that you've probably got a reasonable number of teams who would look at that deal and say, we can get surplus value out of it for 3 more years, right? Get 3 wins potentially out of him for 2 or 3 more years. And maybe if the Padres threw in, $8 million to the deal, something like that, something that helps ameliorate the very back end of the contract, that could be palatable to another team. Now, why would that be good for the San Diego Padres? I think Jake Cronenworth is a really important part of the team. He's not one of the best players on the team. He's definitely in that second line, and as Braden said many times very accurately during the season, it's not okay if he's a number 3 hitter if you want to win the World Series. If he's a number 7 hitter, it's a pretty good spot for a guy like that if you want to be on a World Series team. But the one thing that I would say that would work in favor of moving a Jake Cronenworth, and again, these are all speculative, kind of like sneaky, under-the-radar type ideas in this segment, is that you would be creating some flexibility for yourself the remainder of the decade. This isn't by far the most onerous long-term contract that A.J. Preller and friends have handed out, but it is one that's going to be kind of that thorn in your side potentially for the back half of the decade. And getting out from under that could allow you to reallocate somewhere else.
Yeah, absolutely. So, look, I'm skeptical that the team will do it. It seems from everything that they've said in their plans that this is not part of it. But that being said, like, I think of all the trades, frankly, every single one, even the Arise trade, which I think is like the most likely of the Arb deal ones, I just don't know that another team's going to be willing to take on all of that salary for a player that's really difficult to value. I think the case for Cronenworth getting traded is actually maybe the most justifiable of all of the options we've talked about. But also you have to think about what he means to the team, what he means to the city, what the, commitment that was made to him. And also he, if the Padres play him at second base, he can provide a lot of value for the team. Like, all the reasons that are good for him to be sent somewhere else are good reasons for the Padres to keep him. It just depends on how they're going to deploy him.
All right, before we wrap things up, you had a sneaky one that's been stuck in my mind as well.
Yeah. Again, I want to preface this with, this is a long shot, and I don't know that I see the Padres doing it, but I wanted to talk about Luis Campusano because Luis Campusano right now is about to enter his first year of arbitration. His estimate is that he'll receive, $1.7 million, which is, over the course of this Padres team, really not much of anything. He has 4 years of team control left, 2025 through 2028. Won't be a free agent until 2029. The question is, does this Padres team still believe in Luis Campusano as a catcher? What we saw in 2024 is no. At one point in 2023, he was hitting so much that it really, kind of the defensive miscues weren't really that big of a concern because you were getting surplus value from him by hitting so well at the catching position. In 2024, he had the well-documented mechanics change that was a gamble that he made that just didn't work. And the team basically had to spend the rest of the year trying to, whether he was back in the minors or in the major league lineup or hurt, trying to fix his mechanics to pre-2024. And all the while, his catching, the defense got to the point where it was basically untenable, and that the team, signed Elias Diaz, who's obviously a fantastic backstop, but, let's be real, was like a waiver pickup for the team. And so, they would have rather played that than Luis Campusano, who at one point was, one of the most heralded prospects of the team. So, if the Padres still believe in Luis Campusano as a catcher, and think he can contribute both offensively and defensively, then of course he'll stay. If they don't believe in him as a catcher and really he would just be a hitter type, because again, remember, he was a bat first catcher. That was always the selling point in Luis Campusano. If they see him more as like a first base DH, there is not room for him on the 2025 Padres, just the way that they're allocated right now. Yeah. And so for a team that sees a reclamation project in Luis Campusano, who, oh, by the way, has 4 years at cost control, if they see a potentially bat-first catcher there that they can make, that's very valuable to them. Now, again, really quickly, I will just undercut myself by saying the Padres don't have a catcher right now for 2025. So I don't think that they're in a position to trade anyone, and they really need someone to bridge the gap of the next year, potentially 2 years, until Ethan Salas can theoretically contribute. So That was my sneaky pick. How do you feel about that, Craig?
Well, I think you said it very well at the end there, which is if you think Luis Campusano can play for you, he has to be your starting catcher in 2025. Like, he kind of has to. Maybe you can get Higgy back on a reasonable deal and do a timeshare, but none of it works without Campusano's innings behind the plate. But I do think there would be a number of teams, and I would include a number of small market teams in there, that would look at the price, the upside, and the control and say, Campusano's a guy we can dream on. We can fix him. We can fix his mechanics. Rafi, tell everyone how they can support the podcast.
You can search Padres Hot Tub anywhere that you listen to podcasts. We're also on YouTube. You can find us there. And we're at patreon.com/Padres Hot Tub.
Thank you so much for your time, buddy. Appreciate it. Great hour.
Thanks, Craig. Always love it.
12 o'clock Sports Fix is next on Annie and Elsten. We're at the midpoint of the work week, 12 o'clock on Wednesday, halfway point of the Annie and Elsten broadcast schedule as well. Welcome in, everybody. It's your midday hang, Annie and Elsten on San Diego's #1 sports station, 97.3 The Fan. Annie is off today. She will be back tomorrow. Craig Elsten, Braden Soprano together in our Odyssey studios overlooking balmy Murphy Canyon. We are ready for the back half of the program. Ryan Phillips from Sports Illustrated will be joining us coming up in the next segment. But right now, Braden and I have a fix all cooked up for you. Here we go with all the news that's fit to speak for Wednesday, October 23rd, 2024. It's your 12 o'clock sports fix on Annie and Elsten. And I will get things started with the baseball story of the day. Of course, World Series gets started with Game 1 on Friday with the Dodgers hosting the New York Yankees. The last time these two teams played one another was 1981 in the Fall Classic. When they did, Fernando Valenzuela was the Cy Young Award winner and Rookie of the Year. Yesterday, Fernando passed away at the age of 63. Valenzuela started his big league career with 8 consecutive complete games, an 8-0 record, 5 shutouts, and a 0.50 ERA. He went on to win 173 games in the big leagues and pitch almost 3,000 innings. The middle of his career destroyed by a shoulder injury that he suffered from pitching too much while he was in his 20s. But while he was in his 20s, he was a 6-time consecutive All-Star. From 1981 to 1986, Valenzuela was a San Diego Padre in 1995, 96, and briefly in 1997, highlighted by the 96 season when he started 31 games and won 13 for the NL West champions. Rest in power, Fernando Valenzuela. Shohei Ohtani hit his 50th home run of the year this season at Lone Depot Park in Miami. There was a mad scramble for the ball. There's multiple lawsuits still in courts in terms of who should be the legal owner. But now we know what the price will be for Shohei Ohtani's 50th home run ball this year. It went off at auction yesterday, and the auction closed at a world record $4.4 million. The man who is currently listed as the owner of the ball, not sure if he's going to see all that money, but he's pretty happy for his decision not to give it back to the Dodgers DH. Meanwhile, the New York Yankees are expecting the return of left-hander Nestor Cortes to their potentially rotation, or at least bullpen, for the World Series. What's weird about this? Nasty Nestor went down in September with an elbow flexor strain. What's that? That's the precursor to Tommy John. Same kind of thing, sorta. Not exactly the same, I want to be clear, that Joe Musgrove decided to work around this season. However, it's extraordinarily aggressive to have someone come back from an elbow flexor strain after just a month off. And this is not lost on Nestor Cortes, who said yesterday, quote, "We have weighed in on the consequences that this can lead up to, but if I have a ring and then a year off of baseball, so be it." So basically, Nestor Cortes knows that he has the potential to snap his Tommy John ligament, his UCL, and he says, let's go for it. I want to win the World Series. And if I can help you win the World Series and snap my elbow in the process, cool. Cortes is supposed to be a free agent after 2025. Meanwhile, World Series tickets are for sale. Average price, according to Ticket IQ, is $3,887, the second most expensive since 2010, trailing only the 2016 Cubs versus Indians series. The Yankees side of it, Game 3, 4, 5, ticket prices are averaging $4,875 per ticket. Now, somebody's going to buy something on SeatGeek in the second inning that's going to be way less than that.
That's what I would try to do.
But that's what they're putting out there because everyone somehow expensive tickets is supposed to mean better product. Nonetheless, there's my baseball story. Let's head over to Braden for some football news.
NFL news on a Wednesday. Lots of moving parts as we get closer to a trade deadline. Titans and Chiefs are working to finalize a trade that would send wide receiver DeAndre Hopkins to Kansas City, according to league sources telling ESPN's Adam Schefter. Titans will receive a 2025 fifth-round pick that becomes a fourth-rounder if the Chiefs reach the Super Bowl, and Hopkins plays 60% of the snaps with Kansas City. Tennessee will also pick up $2.5 million of Hopkins' remaining $8 million on his salary this season. Trade is expected to be completed by Wednesday. It is not completed yet. Other news for you, Jameis Winston will be the starting quarterback for the Browns on Sunday when the injury-plagued Browns host the Ravens. Winston ascended to the starting role after Deshaun Watson and Dorian Thompson-Robinson both suffered injuries in Cleveland's loss Sunday to the Cincinnati Bengals. Browns coach Kevin Stefanski announced the quarterback change Wednesday, adding that Thompson-Robinson won't need surgery and will practice this week, but it will be Jameis Winston starting for the Cleveland Browns.
Okay. I mean, I guess that's better.
Jameis is hilarious, dude. I love watching Jameis. We got some Hall of Fame news and notes for you for the Pro Football Hall of Fame class. Two-time Super Bowl MVP Eli Manning, former Defensive Players of the Year Luke Kuechly and Terrell Suggs, and prolific tight end San Diego Charger Antonio Gates are among the players who advanced to the next stage in voting for the 2025 Pro Football Hall of Fame class. The Hall announced Wednesday the 50 modern era candidates who advanced from the original list of 167 after voting by a newly created screening committee. The list includes 8 players in their first year of eligibility and 10 players who were finalists last year but didn't get enough support. Full selection committee will next reduce the list of nominees to 25 semifinalists in about 4 weeks. Then 15 finalists will be picked for the annual meeting before the Super Bowl that will produce the new class. Players must get 80% of votes to get in, with between 3 and 5 players getting in as modern era candidates. So Antonio Gates makes the next stage for the Hall of Fame
I
voting.
feel like he's a Hall of Famer, isn't he?
I would say he is. I know he's got that PED thing that he had a little
so
bit.
late in
but,
his career.
Right. I would put him in the Hall of Fame. I think he's... Can you tell the story about the tight end position in the NFL without mentioning Antonio Gates' name?
I don't think you can.
I don't think you can either. So that's it for the football. Here's Craig with everything else.
All right. Everything else. We're going to start with NBA contract news. A ton of deals went down before the curtain was raised on the 2024-25 season. You might remember a couple of years ago, the Minnesota Timberwolves mortgaged their future, including 5 first-round draft picks, to get center Rudy Gobert. There was zero chance they were ever going to let him go to free agency. A new 3-year, $110 million for the Stifle Tower, Rudy Gobert. Center Alperen Şengün got a 5-year, $185 million deal in Houston. These are rookie extension eligible players who got the bag. Şengün joining Rockets teammate Jalen Green, Pistons point guard Cade Cunningham, Cavaliers forward Evan Mobley, Raptors forward Scotty Barnes, Magic point guard Jalen Suggs, Magic forward Franz Wagner, and Warriors forward Moses Moody, along with the Pelicans' Trey Murphy III, the Wizards' Corey Kispert, and the Hawks' Jalen Johnson, all agreeing to new contract extensions ahead of the deadline. Opening night. Last night in the NBA, Boston Celtics raised their 18th championship to the rafters. Then they raised up to shoot all the threes against the New York Knicks. This game was a wipeout early, 20-point lead by the time 60 total points were scored, and it never really changed. The Celtics tied the NBA single-game record and made 29 three-pointers in a 132-109 rout. Now, Boston really wanted to set the record. So if you tuned into the fourth quarter, you saw some of the ugliest basketball possible, as the Celts, who couldn't miss, realized, and in fact, Derek White, their guard, said on the bench, we're one away. We're one away from the record. The Celtics proceeded to miss their final 13 three-pointers
Jeez.
in the game. Just the fact that they could fire up 13 3-pointers in the final half of the fourth quarter is pretty hilarious. Nonetheless, Celtics win easily, 132. 109. Later in the evening, LeBron and Bronny James checked into the game together in the second quarter at Crypto.com Arena, creating the first father-son on-court moment in NBA history. Bronny played like 3 minutes. He did not score. The real story of the night was Anthony Davis. Excuse me. He had 36 points, 16 rebounds, 3 blocks in a 110-103 Lakers victory over Minnesota. One of those blocks was Rudy Gobert, who he met at the very top at the rim and sweeped the ball straight down like a volleyball spike and then screamed in his face. It was pretty cool. Always known for its impeccable timing, the NHL decided, you know what, maybe last night should be our marquee night for the sport as well. I mean, it's NBA opening night, and everyone's eyes are going to be on the Celtics game and the Lakers game, but why don't we have all 32 of our teams play 16 games in a span of 6 hours and call it the Frozen Frenzy?
I was going to say, what was it called again? The Frozen Frenzy?
The Frozen Frenzy. Hoping that, this was literally the hope of the league, was that fans would not tune anywhere because there was so much action. They would stick to a whip-around, red zone style broadcast on ESPN with Buchagras and just never leave because they were just wrapped up in the Frozen Frenzy. Problem is that the NHL doesn't play on TV like that.
No.
It just doesn't work. Like, oh, well, now we're in Washington. Well, now we're in Ottawa. Yeah. Well, now we're in Dallas. Well,
they're in the red zone ready to... Wait a minute. No, they're not.
No, they're just skating back and forth.
Skating back and forth.
Well, hang on. This one's got a power play. Hold on. Power play. Power plays score like 16% of the time. The good ones.
Yeah, and that's successful.
So, there were a whole bunch of results. Anyways, the Ducks beat San Jose 3-1. The Kings got whomped in Vegas 6-1, and there are 14 other scores you can look up if you'd like. One game tonight, Flyers at Caps. And that's it for your 12 o'clock sports fix for Wednesday, October 23rd, 2024. I just don't get what the NHL is doing, but I've never gotten it.
No.
Like they start their playoffs by playing 4 games all at the same time so that you can't help but not watch.
I don't know why you compete against yourself. It's like the NFL with Monday Night Football these last couple of weeks with the 2 Monday Night Footballs. It's like, what are we doing here? Why are we competing against ourselves? It makes no sense.
You know what would have been a great day for Frozen Frenzy? Thursday. Because today, all the other teams in the NBA play.
Right.
Tuesday, marquee night, championship banner night, Bronny and LeBron night. You weren't going to, don't fight City Hall, right? You're kind of fighting for the same audience.
Yeah, don't pick a losing battle.
Don't fight that battle. Wednesday, the rest of the NBA goes off, all the other opening nights. Don't fight that battle. Thursday is going to be the day everyone takes the day off.
You got no baseball.
Day before the World Series.
You got no NBA team. Everybody's taking the day off in the NBA. You only have to compete against one college football game that is not even going to be that big of a deal. And then what's the Thursday night game? Does
There's
it even
a decent
matter?
Thursday game. I think the Rams are playing. I forget.
Vikings-Rams.
Yeah, I mean, it's a pretty decent Thursday game, but still.
But yeah, it's on streaming only.
Pick your battle.
Yeah, that's a good time to do your Frozen Frenzy or do it instead of playing in Prague.
Also, just don't do a Frozen Frenzy. It doesn't work. It just doesn't work. And I want to be clear as we go to break. I'm a big fan of the National Hockey League. I'm a big fan of the sport of hockey. Hockey works in person. If you've never been to a hockey game, please go to a hockey game. If you're here in San Diego, go to a Gulls game. It's terrific. The AHL is like the NHL minus like 20% of the speed. It's like maybe 20% slower than the NHL. And it's otherwise a great product. It's fast, it's exciting, it's physical. Go see a hockey game in person. Let that cold hit your face as you walk into the arena. There's no feeling like it.
Get some poutine.
If it's available. They sometimes sell it at the arena.
They have it at the Gulls games.
Yeah, get some poutine. Get one of them $5 Mason Ale Works beers on a Friday. Go check out the Gulls. Hockey is incredible in person. It's next best on the radio. And it's least best on TV.
They fall asleep watching them go back and forth.
It's difficult. You got the shiny ice, Everyone's clattering around. The puck's very small. There's a reason why Fox tried to light up the puck 30 years ago.
Fox tracks.
Right, because it's hard to follow the puck. And you don't get the feeling on TV. You don't get the feeling of the boards rattling, of the glass shaking, of the swoosh, of the. You can hear it a little bit, but it's not the same. It's just not the same. So, anyways, anything that the NHL does where they put all their games at the same time and they think that TV is going to be a great vehicle to transfer that to the audience, it just doesn't work. It just doesn't work because you have to see it in person. Okay, when we come back, Ryan Phillips will be joining us in studio from Sports Illustrated. We'll talk some more Padres with him, and later he's going to be the forced contestant on Fast Money.
All right.
I don't have to play. I always like to keep score anyway. I think it's more fun.
More fun to keep score.
It's a little more fun to keep score. I mean, it just kind of laugh at everybody's answers. So all that still to come as Ryan joins us for about the next hour right here on Annie and Elsten, San Diego's #1 sports station, 97.3 The Fan. It's not over. Show's not over. I always laugh when this one comes on. All right, football fans, listen up. You need that extra edge for game day? Then you need to cash the ticket. Numbers, Angles, the podcast for football junkies. New episodes every Thursday and Friday. Mike Valenti and Jim Costa break down the biggest matchups and find the best value on the board every single week. Cash the Ticket is the podcast to help you bet smarter on both pro and college games. Follow Cash the Ticket on the free Odyssey app or wherever you get your podcasts. Just 2 feet to my right, we've got all the King's horses and all the King's men working to put our dear friend Ryan Phillips on the screen. He is here in studio right now with Braden and I, and joining us for the next hour. Thank you for your help, Adam. Appreciate you so much. Ryan, welcome to the program once again, my friend.
Thanks, buddy. Always good to be here.
Once again, writer for Sports Illustrated. I saw you were covering all the action throughout the playoffs here. You know, obviously not the end that we figured, but what was that experience like for you?
I think my biggest takeaway was just how amazing that crowd at Petco is. And it's not, I'd been to games before, but I think seeing it from an objective angle in the press box, you understand why everybody's so impressed by it. And it's a weird thing. It's not the loudest crowd I've ever been. It's very loud. It's one of the loudest. I've been at some pretty big venues, and I've been in enclosed arenas too, which tend to be louder. But it's not just how loud it was. It's the energy that comes from that crowd. It's a very positive energy. I mean, other than when the Padres are getting shut out by the Dodgers, it's a pretty positive energy, and it's a really nice atmosphere to be in when it's sold out like that. So those games were great. I did the wild card in the Division Series games, and I have to give the fans here credit for how they showed up.
Padres showed up until the last 2 games. Then the offense didn't show up at all. It's going to be a sting that we'll deal with the rest of our lives. I mean, if
it was a special team, it felt like a special team,
and that's the whole thing, right? I mean, it hurts because it mattered. I still look at L.A., look at New York, look at San Diego, and say I would take the Padres' chances in a 7-game series against either of those teams. I mean, it's funny, in a 3-game series, Padres beat the Dodgers 2-1. You get the extra 2 games, L.A. came from behind. I don't know if they had another 2 games of pitching in them.
Yeah, especially with the pitching issues. I mean, that's the big thing, and they made it work for them with those with the way their bullpen was, and you have to give them credit because I thought they had some good guys in that bullpen. For the Padres, I was not afraid of that bullpen going in, and they just stepped up and pitched better. And I think they got the Padres out of doing what they do best, which was a lot of contact. You saw the strikeout numbers go up. You saw a lot of weak contact. That wasn't what the Padres did all year, and I think it was just obvious the Padres are overswinging, and they were trying to have those big moments when you kind of get nervous like that. You try and get it all back at once, and it looked like they got into some really bad patterns and bad trends, and it just happened to be the last 2 games of the season. They were shut out once in the second half, and it was, I believe, the first game of the second half, and then to get it shut out back-to-back games in the 2 biggest games of the year is just so uncharacteristic, and that's that old thing where just sometimes baseballs, I mean, there's just weird things happen and patterns get broken and they got to sit with that too. And I think that I was in the clubhouse after game 4 and they were pretty positive. I mean, they knew they had lost. They knew that it was bad, but they were pretty confident. We bounced back all year. We're going to bounce back. We just have to be better. And it didn't happen. And some of that is the Dodgers were great. And some of that is they just got out doing what they do. And you can't lose the character of your team, I don't think, in the postseason, and some teams do that. And the character of this team is a lot of contact and not striking out and putting balls in play, and they didn't do that.
Yeah, I mean, obviously I couldn't agree more. I remember, and I'll again, it's one of these memories I'll hold my whole life, is being there at Game 4, being in the stands, seeing Luis arise, the crowd's going crazy, the Dodgers go into the most exaggerated shift you can in the modern rules,
right.
Basically put the shortstop right behind the second base bag, put their third baseman halfway in between short and third, and I'm going, okay, literally I pointed, Luis is going to hit the ball here. Like, you know how he looks
he's done
around.
all year.
Right,
yeah.
You know how he looks around before his at-bat. I'm like, Luis is going to hit the ball right over here into this wide open 5.5 hole. You could drive a truck through it right now. It's so big. You could lay a truck on its side in the middle of the infield, and it would still be bracketed by the infielders, and then Luis hit a pull ground ball to first base. And
you saw him elevating the ball a lot,
Yeah.
too, in that last stretch. And I know he's got the thumb injury. He had the thumb injury and all of that. But, I mean, you just saw guys doing things. They hit the ball hard a number of times, but right at people, and they were trying to elevate instead of just like start a rally, get the ball in play and move it and hit it around the field, make the Dodgers make errors. The Dodgers weren't great defensively in that series a couple times, and they just didn't make it tough. They didn't make the Dodgers pitchers uncomfortable, really. There were a couple times they had two guys on, but never really felt like they were about to break through. And that Game 4, I mean, that crowd was electric early, and then it was amazing how deflated it got as the game went on and they fell further behind. And I think everybody was just like groaning in their seats, just, oh no. And then of course it winds up being 10-0 or whatever it finished at. And so, yeah, it was a great season. It was a really fun season. One of the most fun seasons I've had as a Padres fan. And it's sad that it ended the way it did, especially against the team it did. I think if we lost to the Mets, you'd be like, that's a bummer. But to lose to the Dodgers when you're up 2-1, that's a bitter pill to swallow.
Well, it leads us to the offseason that is. And, I mean, we could – I'm so happy to have the space now between here and games 4 and 5. It was a pretty tough week of radio last week.
I can imagine.
Just trying to go through this and go through it and go through it and go through it and go through it again. Like, I'm going to, again, there's certain things I'll take to my grave for this, and hopefully it's going to be bookended with, and then the Padres won the title, and we'll have all those good feelings to fill the bad feelings. But, I'll probably go to my grave believing, without it being provable, that this team psychologically took a bullet between games 2 and 3 when there was a really deliberate attempt to change the narrative away from Dodgers fans throwing trash on the field to Padres players having bad behavior and having, But what about your behavior over there, you silly guy who pulls the fire alarm, you dancing peacock, you? Like, Ken Rosenthal, I think, again, I'll go to my grave. They will never admit this. You can't confirm it. I'm just saying it, that I think he got into their heads. I think they got into that villain mold, and villains pull the ball, and heroes hit to the opposite field.
Yeah, and I mean, really, that piece has been denounced enough. I don't need to pile on, but I read it and just was shocked at that article, especially then when the video surfaced. And you saw it was really nothing, and it was something that happens in every inning. And then later, Dave Roberts admitting, oh yeah, I totally made that up to motivate our players, or I forget how he worded it, but basically that was it. And I just, there's like, that's gamesmanship and it happens, but it was how hard certain people fell for it that really shocked me. It's because that's immediately what I thought is he's trying to like motivate his team. Like they were going after me, defend me by beating them or something like that. And for a guy like Rosenthal to just step right in that hole. And then again, multiple angles coming out, and every video that came out made it look more and more benign. Like every time it was like, oh yeah, that happens every game. I used to do that in high school. It's just, but it worked. I mean, you have to like, it absolutely worked, and the Dodgers are where they are, and the Padres are at home. And so you have to be mentally tougher than that. You can't let stuff like that get to you. Just like you can't let the fans throwing trash on the field get to you. You can let it motivate you, but you can't let it throw you off your game. Yu Darvish showed that. Yu Darvish sat out there for 15 minutes between innings while they cleaned that up, and he immediately went out and shut him back down. And the rest of the team has to take on that mentality. I think that the guys coming back will be stronger for how this season ended. I think it's going to be a tough stretch until then.
Ryan Phillips joining us from Sports Illustrated. Heard the boys in the morning show bring you up over the weekend, Ryan, for a tweet where you said that you basically have no interest in watching this year's World Series. How do you still hold that way?
Yeah, what I meant was that, for the World Series, I like when it's an underdog versus a big team. I like having a rooting interest. I don't like either team. I don't find them particularly likable, and I'm not really motivated by the New York versus LA thing. Yeah, I'm a Padres fan, so maybe that plays something into it. But, I think I think more of it is a reaction to people saying this is such an amazing thing for baseball. It's like a lot of fans are being left out here because they don't like either team. And I saw somebody say that this is the best thing to ever happen to baseball in this era because of the sagging ratings and all that. You're going to get the international audience, the two biggest cities, the two best teams. And I was like, integration was probably better for baseball, I'd say, just if I have to put my opinion in there, slightly more important to the history of the game. I understand that. And I understand the ratings are going to be big. And I understand people want to see Shohei Ohtani. They want to see Aaron Judge. Personally, I just look at it as it's two teams who are there quite often. The Yankees have won like 5 in my lifetime. The Dodgers have been 4 of the last 8 World Series. Like I've seen them play before in the regular season. Like it's not as special as it was before interleague play.
That's true.
And so I just, I'll see what happens, but I'm not like I have to be there for first pitch right now and watch this. I honestly was more excited about the World Baseball Classic with Ohtani pitching against the Americans than I am. He and Judge aren't going to face each other. They're both on the other side, facing pitchers. So
maybe Game 7, you never know.
Yeah, I mean it's and again, I'm not saying that other people feel the same way as I do. That's just how I feel. I'm not super excited for it.
I think my absolute dream scenario for the World Series would be for it to go 7 games, be as classic as it could possibly be along that route. Some team is down 3-1 and wins games 5 and 6. And then Game 7, the Dodgers take a lead at home and give the ball to Shohei in the 9th, and he blows it.
Yeah, that would be amazing.
And he just serves up like 3 straight singles, a walk, and a grand slam.
Do you think the Dodgers pitching can hold up in this series?
Maybe. I think Vesia is a huge miss for them. I actually do. I think Vesia
he's got experience in the playoffs,
too.
And
he would have had the opportunity to. First of all, he's good enough that he could face a Gleyber Torres before Juan Soto, but he would have been. That I'm not, but the guy back here, Dave Roberts, that I hide behind the 97.3 The Fan sign back here. He could probably line up Vesia to face Soto like almost every game.
Yeah,
at some point,
And the thing with Soto is, 40% of the time you're going to walk him anyway. It feels like. And so if you give him stuff to hit, but not anything good, and if you walk him, that's probably going to happen a lot of the time anyway. So
yeah. I think that personally, I think the Yankees are going to win.
I do too.
But honestly, I can see the path for the Dodgers quite easily. It's just that their offense continues. Yeah. If their offense continues, if Cole isn't good, if Nestor Cortez goes out there and just snaps his elbow, the Yankees.
Both teams have pitching concerns.
They do.
That's, yeah.
Yeah, Luke Weaver is wobbling now at the back end. He feels like a Cinderella slipper guy.
All of the shutdown relievers during the regular season are struggling during the postseason. I guess maybe it's a lot of innings. I don't know. But I think that the key to the Dodgers is not beating the top of their lineup. It's shutting down the bottom half. If 5 through 9 do nothing, you limit the damage that 1 through 4 do.
Yeah.
And those guys have all struggled this year. I know Tommy Edmonds on fire right now, but those bottom guys have all struggled at different points this year. If you can shut them down, it's one thing the Padres didn't do. If you can shut those guys down and beat those guys, Shohei Ohtani comes up with nobody on base. Then Mookie Betts can be shaky in the postseason. Freddie Freeman's injured right now. Teoscar's been great, but again, if by getting the other guys out, you can limit the damage they do, and then you've got your lineup, which is incredibly deep. So I think that's the key to the Dodgers is whatever the top 4 do, fine, but shut down the rest of the guys to limit the damage.
Last thing I'll say about that is we talk about this matchup, and the one guy that people aren't going to be talking about enough, but you got to Giancarlo Stanton's got 5 homers in the playoffs.
Oh, he's been
already.
amazing in the playoffs. And he's the kind of guy that when he's healthy, he's an incredibly dangerous hitter. He's just never been healthy over the last few years, not consistently. And now it seems like he is feeling pretty good, and that adds more to that lineup because it's a Soto Judge lineup. But now you got Stanton.
Stanton's the hottest of them all.
Absolutely.
He's got a career slugging percentage in the playoffs of .677. He's got a career OPS in the playoffs of 1,019. And this year, He just had a 1222 OPS in the ALCS. So Stanton is just that one of those guys, just feels like a difference maker.
And if he can just feel good for the next 4 to 7 games, it doesn't matter what happens after, how he, whatever. If he stays healthy and feels good during that stretch, that's a guy who can turn a series. Absolutely.
And here's something wacky just to think about as we go to break. He's going to make the Hall of Fame. Like, he's 34. He's got 429 career homers right now.
That's insane to think about how many home runs he has.
429 career homers. He's a 5-time All-Star. He's won league MVP. He's currently he's got 45 WAR right now, B-WAR for his career. And, there's a lot of things about him that you would say are basically like the last 6 or 7 years of his career where you'd kind of go, nah. Like, if you had just said to me just randomly 3 weeks ago, Giancarlo Stanton, Hall of Fame, I'd be like, no.
Well, here's something to consider, is that he's got 429 home runs. He's only hit over 40 once, and he had 59.
Yeah.
And that just shows the consistency of being in that upper 30s kind of area or mid-30s area for that long. You're right. You have to consider it.
And in his age 29 and 30 seasons, he hit 10 homers combined in 2 years. So, he had basically 3 years hollowed out by injury. And now he's
almost
back to
4, honestly.
Yeah. And now here he is. It's just wild to think that he's almost undone. Like, just tack on 4 more years, 25 homers a year. He's well over 500. He's automatically
yeah. If you hit 500, you're in. So
you're in.
He's got 429 home runs and only 1,500 hits. 1,551.
That's wild.
It's insane.
Let's take a timeout. When we come back, Ryan Phillips is ready to take on the audience in Fast Money. And we've got a great prize to give away today. A pair of tickets to Saturday's San Diego State football game against Washington State at Snapdragon Stadium. You can get tickets on your own at goaztecs.com. But here's what's going to happen. We need 2 people on the line to give us a call at 833-288-0973. 833-288-0973. First person to get through will be the contestant. They will play Ryan head-to-head. And if they win, they get to go to the game. The second person on hold is going to be our avatar. They will just sit there and hope that Ryan wins. Because if Ryan wins, they will go to the football game instead. Don't sell yourself short, Ryan. You're a tremendous slouch. We're going to come back.
Certainly true.
We're going to come back and play Fast Money, today's silly game. So give us a ring. Need 2 people online. 833-288-0973. 833-288-0973. We come back to play Fast Money next on The Fan. Back with you on the Fan. It's Annie and Elsten. Annie Halbrin off today. She'll be back tomorrow. Craig Elsten, Braden Soprano, joined by Ryan Phillips from Sports Illustrated in studio between now and 1:30. And you've walked in at exactly the right time. Ryan, we do this every day. Every day, third segment of the third hour. We play a silly game, a little bit of a palate cleanser, chance to clear out the sports talk, do something silly, have some fun, and give something away. And today, it's Fast Money Day. Here we go. It's the very popular bonus round from the Family Feud game show. It's Fast Money, where our resident Ray Combs, Braden Soprano, has surveyed one of our previous studio audiences here at the Odyssey Palace Studios, and you're going to be looking for the most popular answers. Now, up for grabs today, a pair of tickets to this Saturday night's San Diego State game against Washington State at Snapdragon Stadium. You can get
Homecoming
tickets
this weekend.
Oh, hey, all right.
There you go.
Thought you're
Even bigger
supposed
deal.
to schedule the team that you can beat on.
As I told my friend who's a Washington State fan, they had Hawaii on the schedule, and they still purposely chose you. That's
Yeah.
what they think of you, Washington State.
Apparently so.
That's right.
GoAztecs.com if you don't win these tickets. But we've got a contestant online, Nick in Poway, who is going to be playing Ryan head-to-head on Fast Money. Hi, Nick. Welcome to the show.
How's it going today, guys?
Doing real well, man. Tell us a little bit about yourself before we play the game.
Just a lifelong San Diegan. Just had a nice little sushi lunch, so I'm ready to go.
Okay. All
You're a
right.
Padres fan?
Little protein in you. You're set. Did you go with the wasabi
Oh, yeah.
there? Go with the wasabi?
Oh yeah,
Nick?
I put a bunch on there, so hopefully I can speak
He's
well
gonna be-
enough with that.
He's going to be very focused.
I love it. Now, Nick, if you beat Ryan, you're going to the Aztecs game. However, if Ryan wins today, Michelle in Oceanside is our avatar, and she is rooting for Ryan. And Michelle, if Ryan wins, you get the tickets. Welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you.
Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, I'm in Oceanside, just working from home and listening to you guys.
Appreciate you. Well, you've got the easiest job in radio, Michelle. Just hang out on hold. And if Ryan wins, you get the tickets. You don't have to do anything. So you're all
Promise to
set.
do my best.
All right, Ryan, it's time for you to leave the studio. At which point, our man, Braden Soprano, the Steve Harvey of Odyssey,
There you go.
he's got the questions. Okay, Nick, you're online. Good luck, buddy, as you take on Ryan. Here's Braden.
All right, you got 1 minute on the clock, Nick, to try to get the best or most popular answer for each question. If any of them stump you and you want to pass, we can get back to it if we have other time left over. 1 minute on the clock starts as I ask you question number 1. Name something country songs are about.
Horses.
Horses, he says.
good.
They're about horses.
I mean, there are some wild
Sometimes,
horses.
yeah, I would say. Specifically, what is the most time-consuming thing you have to deal with at Christmas time?
Shopping.
Shopping. It's a great answer.
All right.
Name something that starts with the word king.
Oh. With King, you said?
The word
Yeah.
king, yeah.
Kingsman.
Kingsman. Okay.
Kingsman. All right.
That's true.
Name a time when you have to have your picture taken.
School. Yearbook.
School
Oh, I love
picture.
that. It's got to be number one.
Name a job that's performed in a courtroom.
In a courtroom, a lawyer?
A
Lawyer.
lawyer. That's
Very
good.
good. Good answers.
Plenty of time.
And time to spare. Nick, your answers are locked in. All right. Here comes Ryan. Ryan doesn't know any of the answers that Nick gave.
He was very nervous about the game, too.
Don't worry, Ryan. Here's the
Little
deal.
bit, yeah.
If you're going to get the same questions that Nick got, if you give the same answer that Nick got, you'll hear that.
Right.
And you'll just have to go again. And
Get a better answer.
good luck.
Let's do it.
All right, 1 minute on the clock starts when I ask you the first question. If you need to pass, we can get back to it if we have time remaining. Name something country songs are about.
Pickup trucks.
Pickup trucks.
Yes.
It's a good answer. Specifically, what is the most time-consuming thing you have to deal with at Christmas time?
Putting up lights.
Lights.
All right, good answer.
Name something that starts with the word king.
Kingdom.
Kingdom.
Okay.
Name a time when you have to have your picture taken.
Prom.
That's different than school, isn't it?
It is.
I could change if you want.
Yeah, change again.
A wedding.
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 Probably a better answer anyway.
Fair enough.
Name a job that's performed in a courtroom.
A lawyer.
Try again.
Judge.
Judge. All right, let's get to it.
Here comes the judge, and here come the scores. All right, let's get to it.
Name something country songs are about. Nick said horses.
That's what my first thought was.
Nothing.
0. Ryan said trucks.
Pickup trucks. What?
Also nothing. Number one answer was love. Second was divorce/breakup. Hard times. People. No job. Bad job.
Who was being interviewed here?
I don't know.
I have never heard a country song that didn't say pickup truck at some point.
I agree. Or
Cold
drinking,
beer and
or
pickup truck.
shooting things. Or
All right, through one
fishing.
question, the score is 0. Yeah. Wow. Shut out.
Specifically, what is the most time-consuming thing you have to do at Christmas time? Nick said shopping.
Yeah, that's good.
Number one answer, 31
Yeah.
points.
Yeah,
That's good.
call.
Ryan said hanging up Christmas lights will get you with decorating. 18 points.
Okay.
Yeah.
Seems fair.
31
Still in it.
Name something that starts with the word king. Or Kingsman
Kingsman.
is what Nick said.
Yeah.
We had kingpin, but no kingsmen. Ryan said kingdom. 17 points.
Oh.
Number one answer was King Kong.
35-31. Ryan takes the lead after
I was
3.
thinking of like one word.
I was thinking
Yes.
King James. I would have
King Kong,
zeroed
King
out.
Size, King Tut. Top 3 answers.
King Tut.
Yes.
So clearly done in 1978.
King Salmon, King Crab, King Cobra.
King Tut.
Name a time when you have to name a time when you have to have your picture taken. Nick said school. Good answer. 8 points, school picture.
Only 8?
Ryan said a wedding. 17 points.
Oh, my.
Was that a wedding this
goodness.
weekend? That helped.
Number one answer was getting a driver's license.
Ah, that's good.
52-39. Still anyone's game going to the last one.
Name a job that's performed in a courtroom. Nick said a lawyer. 17 points.
That's it.
Ryan said a judge. 17 points. Tied for the number 2 answer.
And there it is. Ryan's our winner.
Ryan gets the win.
And that means, Michelle, you're going to go see the Aztecs play Washington State on Saturday night. Congratulations. How do you feel you did in your performance, Michelle?
Fantastic. This is the best I've ever done. Thank
Well
you.
Filled the
done.
role perfectly.
Nick, you
Yeah.
did quite well yourself, man. We appreciate you. Thank you for being a contestant. Please call in for a future game. You are eligible to continue to play. But Michelle, just hang out there on hold. We will get your information during the break. You want to run through some of the answers?
Yeah, we went through most of them. Time consuming for Christmas: shopping, decorating, wrapping gifts, Christmas cards, and cooking. We went through the king ones. Pictures: getting a driver's license, wedding, graduation, school picture, birthday, getting a passport. I feel like that's kind
Passport
of the
was
same.
on my mind,
Passport,
too.
yeah.
Name a job that's performed in a courtroom: stenographer, a lawyer, attorney, judge, bailiff, court reporter.
Wait, what
Stenographer
was number one?
number one?
That was number 1.
Stenographer over judge and lawyer?
Yes, that's apparently
I'd really
very
love to meet-
distracting.
I'd love to meet some of these people who didn't
Yeah.
think a country song would be about a pickup truck at any point.
No job, bad job is interesting.
We
2
interviewed
people said
100
that.
stenographers and asked them.
I mean, most of the ones for the song were like what most songs are about anyway, not
Yeah, it wasn't
necessarily
specific
country.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Rough.
I guess you should just always answer love.
Yeah.
That's like what all songs are about.
Yeah.
What are most movies about? What are most
Love.
songs about?
Love.
Most books.
Unless it's a Marvel movie, then it's about
Yeah.
a multiverse or something.
They throw some love in there.
Sure, occasionally. Usually unrequited. Another great episode of Fast Money, another fun, silly game. Tomorrow, we play the match game. So stay tuned for that. But after this quick time out, Ryan and I are back to hit reset on some of the topics of the day and to delve into more, including the start of the NBA season. Got an actual basketball fan here in studio. We'll chat about it when we come back. Andy and Elsten on The Fan. Welcome back. Final hour of our Wednesday get-together. It's your midday hang. It's Annie and Elsten on San Diego's #1 sports station, 97.3 The Fan. Annie has today off. She will be back tomorrow. I'm Craig Elsten, joined in studio by Ryan Phillips from Sports Illustrated. Welcome back.
Thanks, buddy.
I mean, you didn't leave. We just sat here.
No, I just sat here quietly in dead silence. Saved it all for the air.
Quietly read together. Braden Soprenet, of course, here, as well as we roll till 2 o'clock. Gwen and Chris, they're already in the Odyssey Palace. They're getting ready. They'll be here with you with Matt Scraby from 2 to 6. And then everybody leaves. The entire building is dark and quiet, except for one man wearing black, Matt Scraby. The Scraby Show. It's just one man, no one else. That's it.
Building completely empty.
It is. Just tumbleweeds and scrapes.
The cleaning crew comes in, cleans around him.
Not even then. They wait till he leaves.
Really?
They're like, no, this is Scraby's time.
Let him have it.
And we'll enjoy that all together tonight at 6 o'clock. I promise we will. Meanwhile, Ryan's here with me for the next couple of segments. Earlier in the show, we talked some World Series. We talked a lot of Padres. If you missed our discussion with Rafi Cantor on Padres Hot Tub, going through the tradable assets of the team this winter, you can find that. Odyssey's app allows you to visit on demand, to click the on demand and go back and search. You can go back in our YouTube chat as well and find it all. We talked a little bit about Fernando and the passing of Fernando Valenzuela. He was a guy who, when I was a kid, helped really form baseball for me. And he wasn't my favorite player ever. Like, I was never like a number one Fernando Valenzuela fan, but I talked about it a little bit earlier in the show, right? Not only, because I grew up in Long Beach. I grew up supporting, so, I say that full disclosure.
You don't have to finish that sentence. It's good. We get it.
You know. So, first World Series I remember in my life was 1981. That's the first one I remember watching. And in Game 3 of the 1981 World Series, Fernando Valenzuela pitched a complete game, 147-pitch, 16-base runner game, winning 5-4.
If that happened nowadays, like if something like that, the manager would be asleep in the dugout. There's no way anybody would let that happen.
Yeah, but kidnapped.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like, literally, it's so incongruous to any. I went back and looked at the box score of that game and the play-by-play. Fernando would have been pulled with one out in the top of the third inning. Absolute guarantee.
Yeah.
When he gave up the homer to Rick Cerrone and it was 4-3, and he had thrown like 60 pitches in 2 1/3 innings, he would have been out of there.
Well, that was the World Series where they had 3 MVPs, right?
Yeah,
I think
it
it
was
was
the tri-MVP.
Yeah, like, come on, just make a choice. Like, let's pick him. But yeah, as I didn't watch him when I was, I was very young at that point, or not even alive at that point. But no, I remember when he pitched the MLB's first game in Mexico for the Padres, and that was just. I remember watching that, like, this is a moment. I mean, the game ended 15-10 because that was a launching pad of a stadium. But I remember just watching that, thinking this is pretty amazing that this guy who's the biggest Mexican star probably in baseball history is starting a game in his home country.
Yes.
The first time Major League Baseball has ever done this. Now they've done it a number of times, but I remember that moment being just really incredible. It
was, I think, the most special moment in his career. August 16th, 1996, and that's arguable because he went to 6 straight All-Star games. He threw
his first 8 starts in the major leagues no one's ever going to do that again.
Never. 8 complete games, 5 shutouts, 8-0, 0.50 ERA.
He won all 8 of his that doesn't happen anymore. Guys don't win that many straight decisions. There's starts, decisions, let alone starts.
Correct.
Yeah.
It'll never happen again. But that day, August 16th, 1996, Fernando Valenzuela had the weight of the Mexican sports world on his shoulders. He had the spotlight of the country all to himself. The chant of Toro, Toro, Toro raining down in Estadio Monterrey. And he pitched shutout baseball for 6 innings for the Padres in that game. Gave up a couple of hits, left in the 7th inning ahead 15-1. The team went on to win 15-10.
I remember getting nervous on that.
Yeah,
one.
very, very Padre-ish fashion. There were 6 innings where we're like, the
We're the greatest team on the planet.
Right? Like the outfield fences are 100 feet away for us and 500 feet away from them. And then it changed all in the second half of the game. But the other way that Fernando really impacted my learning as a baseball fan as I grew more advanced was how his career was destroyed by Tommy Lasorda and by overuse and by throwing, as a 23-year-old, 280 innings in a major league season.
Yeah, and that Lasorda had that reputation for a long time, and there's a reason. I mean, the Dodgers in an organization before Lasorda had that reputation for a long time. And so, yeah, I mean, that's, Fernando, the fact that he was actually able to pitch for the Padres all those years later was kind of shocking that he had some success at that age and after all of the arm issues he had had.
So that was something we chatted about a little earlier in the show, and Fernando Valenzuela passing at the age of 63. Way too young, and to do it on the how dare you die at this time? But that's not what I'm saying. But like Fernando dying just right before this rematch.
Yeah,
it's just it's a poignant thing that is pretty obvious. Now, with that, let me get to this. We didn't actually get to this a little bit earlier in the show because we were talking about Nando, and then we talked some college football. I've never heard of this Twitter account, MLB Executive Burner. So take that for what it's will, okay? It's followed by enough people, including Ruben Niebla. That's the main reason why I'm bringing this up, because Ruben Niebla follows this account. So at least someone in the coaching staff has seen this. They came out with some free agent contract projections.
Okay.
For the offseason, including some of the San Diego Padres, of course. But let's start with Juan Soto. Contract projection, 14 years, $600 million.
I would think it's going to be 600 million. That's unless those last four are like option years or something. There's option years in there or something, or opt-outs. I wonder how many he's going to get.
He's going to have an opt-out guaranteed.
Maybe after 5.
That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah. I think that, Shohei got the 700, but really it's, 460 because of the deferrals or whatever. I don't think Soto's going to go for deferrals. I think he wants, that's just what I had heard. Now, he may. I mean, in the situation, they make him, no, this is actually good for you. But he doesn't have the endorsements Ohtani does.
Correct.
Where Ohtani can take the $2 million now, make tens of millions of dollars anyway from other things and go out. So I would be surprised if it was 14 for 600. I think he's going to get 600. I think it's going to be for a shorter time period. I
tend to agree with that. A couple of Padres are on this list. I do not believe that Jurickson Profar will get a 6-year, $84 million deal.
I don't believe that at all.
I don't think that's remotely close to right.
I think he's getting 2 or 3 years. This year, if you look at his career, is an outlier, and teams are very wary these days of giving guys his age money after an outlier year. And I think that at the end of the year, he kind of slowed down. Maybe teams are going to look at that and say, because it's not like he finished hitting gangbusters at the end. He kind of tailed off at the end. They're going to look at that as, maybe he went back down to earth. Because I think most people I talked to in baseball thought it's a really nice story. He made the All-Star game, but he's not going to keep this up, and
right.
He's getting, and he actually did for most of the season. I think that was the most surprising part. It wasn't that he got hot. He's always had the talent, but it was that he maintained it. I think he's getting 2 or 3 years. I don't think he's getting a huge deal. I think there'll be some player options, but I don't think he's going to get a near $100 million contract.
Well, I would agree, and I would say that the evidence to back it is what happened the last time Jurickson hit the market in 2020.
He wasn't an attractive player to teams.
In 2022, Jurickson Profar had a 3-WAR season, and he was 29 years old, and he went out on the market, and he got nothing. And then it was the middle of spring training that he wound up signing a 1-year make-good with the Colorado Rockies, and then he proceeded to put up a terrible season, which led to his $1 million contract this year, and now he puts up 3.7 WAR. So he did have a better year than in 2022.
This is the best year of his career, not even close.
Not even close, but it's also still not a 4-win season.
And he's 2 years older.
Now he's going into his age 32 season. Why would anyone pony 6 years for Jurickson? That's just balderdash.
I don't see it at all. I really don't. And I think if he were 24, 25, 26, maybe, but not at his age and with his history.
Yeah. Okay. So now I'm trending towards just not believing anything I'm reading on this. Ha-Sung Kim, 3 years, $54 million. I'm sorry, not with this shoulder injury. Not to say that those numbers might not be there.
If he had gone out last year, I think he's getting $4 and $80.
Yeah.
But this year, he didn't hit as well when he was active, then had the shoulder injury. His value is heavily based on defense, which teams don't consider as much as important anymore, even though I think it is. There are some guys who are more important to the team they're on than they are to anybody else. I'd put Luis Arraez in that for the Padres. I think he's more important to that lineup than he would be for virtually any other team. Profar, same thing. I think he's more valuable to the Padres than he is to any other team. I think teams will look at Profar and say, we could get a guy like that. We could find a guy like that. I think Kim is that way for the Padres. He fixes their defensive problems on the infield because they move everybody over and all of that. When they don't, we saw it sometimes pop up with Xander Bogaerts this year playing back at shortstop. So I think the rest of the league will not find him as valuable as the Padres would, but I don't think he'll be back. I just think that that's too much money. There's going to be too much money there.
They were talking about it a little bit on the morning show, and it got our boss Adam so hyped up. He jumped in between shows to run into the studio to talk about it, but it's true. And by the way, according to Fangraphs, it's an $8 million opt-out for this year. People were saying 7. I believe it's 8 for Ha-Sung Kim.
Okay.
This offseason. But either way, the important part is the Padres have to pay Ha-Sung Kim $2 million no matter what.
Yes.
They either pay him $2 million to walk away or they pay him the $2 million plus 6 more to play for them next year. Both sides have to agree. If either side disagrees, the deal goes off the table. Kim still gets the $2 million. Ha-Sung Kim hired Scott Boras. Scott Boras will commit seppuku on the stage of MLB Network before he allows a player in his clientele
to go back for 1 year and $8 million.
Yeah, to take a $6 million deal essentially,
Yeah.
which is what it would be for next year because the $2 million's already in his pocket, no matter what.
Yeah.
Impossible. Kim possible. So, yeah.
Yeah, I don't
Okay.
think he's getting $20 million a year, which is essentially the projection. $354.
Yeah.
I think he might get more years, but less per year than that. Like 4.
Given that he can't play for maybe the first half of the season,
Yeah.
I could see him sign a 1 or 2 year make good, but I could also just see him sign with the Giants for 6 years and, like you said, have a much lower salary
Yeah.
in the first year as
For
he
sure.
rehabs and gets back to health. Could the Padres find a deal somewhere along the way that makes sense between themselves and Ha-Sung Kim? They could. However, when you look at their debts and obligations, it's really hard to make a new deal for Ha-Sung Kim fit underneath even the second apron.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that. I think he's the one that they are going to go get a stopgap guy to fill that position until DeVries is ready. And I feel that way about catcher, too.
All right, let me do 2 more of these. Blake Snell, 3 years, $105 million.
That's probably about right.
That could be about
Yeah,
right, isn't
over
it?
30. He earned it again by, he had that slow start because he signed so late. But once he got on the mound and started to feel comfortable in San Francisco, he was lights out. I think he's going to be the top pitcher available.
Burns, Corbin Burns.
Oh, Burns too. Yeah, I guess I was just assuming the Orioles were trying to re-sign him, but yeah, I don't think they will.
Well, they've got the projection on him as 7 years, $245 million. That's a
Yeah.
lot of coin.
He's going to be the big number one. Yeah,
I think the Orioles could afford to sign
they
him.
could, especially with their new ownership. It's just not the way they've operated for so long. It's hard to feel that shift.
Here, just take this one and put it in your back pocket. This is my prediction of my one prediction I'm going to make on the free agent market. Sean Manaea, San Francisco Giant.
Yeah, I could see that. I mean, easily. And
Bob Melvin, did you see how he changed his arm slot there, Buster? You've got a less sophisticated president of baseball operations now. Hey, Buster, take a look at what he did.
yeah,
Go ahead. Let me tell you, he's such a great clubhouse guy. I'll back Manaea all the way. Now he's throwing so hard. We can get him. He's our Snell replacement for only 65% of the cost. I'm calling this one.
I wouldn't surprise me at all.
Melvin likes his boys.
I think he'll either be back in New York or the Giants make a lot of sense.
Melvin likes his boys. He likes Chapman. He likes Manaea. There's Mark Canha found his way to the
Yep.
Giants eventually.
Yep.
Mark Canha will always find his way to wherever Bob Melvin is.
I could see Kim being there too. I mean,
Oh, that's a great point from Roastmaster in the chat. How much would Blake Snell cost in Fortnite V-Bucks?
No idea, but that's a good way to think about it.
Could we
Let's see.
just 1 billion V-Bucks?
Be like, sign wherever, just sign it, sign it.
Based on what I've heard, I think 1 billion V-Bucks is a decent amount. I think it's like 2,800 V-Bucks is like a normal thing to buy something, according to my 13-year-old son. So
That's who you got to go to for that kind of information.
1 billion V-Bucks and 80 million regular American dollars. What do you say? What do you say, Blake? What do you say? All right.
I think everybody's wish casting a Blake Snell return, but that's going to be very pricey.
All I'd love to see is the Padres spend money this offseason, but how you fit another
It's a puzzle.
$30 million player, how?
Yeah.
Xander's not walking out that door. He's not like just going like, okay, guys, see you later. I'm going to forfeit the last 9 years of my deal. I want to go back to Aruba. Like, no, it's not happening.
No, it's not. And they're going to be stuck with that one for quite a while.
All right, when we come back, Ryan and I are going to chat through opening night in the National Basketball Association. And I think we've got now officially the last time that a player is going to be able to ask somebody, can you just give me the ball for a picture and an autograph and a bat and a jersey and whatnot. I think it's officially over after yesterday. We'll get into that story as well. Craig Elsten, Ryan Phillips here in studio, filling in for Annie. It's Annie and Elsten, San Diego's #1 sports station, 97.3 The Fan. Did you know you can listen to 97.3 The Fan with your smart speaker? Huh, well, you can. Just ask that device to play 97.3 The Fan, and it'll happen. Annie and Elsten back with you. Craig Elsten, joined by Ryan Phillips in studio from Sports Illustrated for one more segment. Braden Soprano alongside as well. And as you know, I'm a huge NBA fan. You're a basketball fan too. Now you're a big college basketball fan.
Yes, and I played growing up. I love all forms of basketball.
It hosts an Indiana podcast, by the way. Was it Assembly Call? Is that what
Assembly Call?
Assembly Call. I see all the tweets when they come up.
I know a lot of people mute me during basketball season. And I'm like, I don't blame you. I don't.
No, it's very fair. Nonetheless, I do think the NBA has really improved their product year over year. I think that there's a lot of inherent negative thoughts about the NBA regular season, that it's too long, that players don't give it their all. I would counter by saying that NBA athletes are usually the athletes in the best shape of anybody across any sport.
Would agree.
That it's an incredibly physically debilitating sport to play 82 games in the time span that they play. That when you fall on a wooden court, it hurts every single time. And that the bumps and bruises that come with playing in the NBA are...
I mean, my knees hurt. I can't imagine what it's like for them.
Right.
You know, to do that every day. It's
flying in between everything else.
It's a tough sport.
The combination of the play-in tournament and something that I personally really liked, the NBA Cup, which last year they called in-season tournament, but now they've got a decent name for. That means that before December now, we actually have something interesting.
Yep.
That leads.
I thought it was fun last year. I really did. I mean, it was a confusing kind of. I think people will get used to it, but it was a confusing sort of setup to how it worked. But once you get to the tournament portion, the semifinals and finals, it's easy to understand.
Yeah, and even otherwise, it's like, oh, it's weird court day, so I guess it's NBA Cup day because all the courts change. So you're like, okay, today's a cup game,
and they also count as regular season games too. I mean, it's interesting.
Which reminds me of soccer. In a way, in terms of like, okay, well, this is a Champions League game, and this one is a regular game.
That's
this
clearly
one's a
what
double.
they're going. That's clearly what they're going for.
Yeah, an FA Cup style type thing. Nonetheless, last night NBA season started with both the new and the old. Boston Celtics are the franchise. They're one of the oldest franchises, but I would argue the Celtics right now are the franchise that is most emblematic of 2024-25. NBA basketball because of Joe Mazzulla and a 100% commitment to shooting three-pointers.
Yeah.
To just the math of 3 is greater than 2. So if I put up enough threes, your 2s aren't going to be enough to catch us.
Just adopting what the Warriors did and taking it to the next level, essentially. And the teams that have followed that approach have wound up being successful because you're right, 3 is more than 2. Players are a lot better at shooting threes because they grow up shooting them now, something that didn't happen when I was a kid.
Right.
Very few people were the three-point shooters. Now everybody can shoot a 3 no matter what your size, your position, whatever. And, they ran that to the extreme last year in the playoffs. I mean, they went 16-3 in the playoffs and led the league with 64 wins. I mean, they were dominant. That was one of the more dominant seasons we've seen in the last 20 years. And they're so good right now at everything they do. I mean, and I wouldn't say they're going to get better because last year was such a peak. But like right now, if you're looking at who's going to win the NBA championship, there's nobody else you can mention in the number one position than the Celtics. They brought everybody back.
Yeah.
Everybody. Tatum, Jaylen Brown, Drew Holiday, Derek White, Kristaps Porzingis. Even Al Horford is back, even though he said initially he was probably going to retire. Nope, he's back. And they're just, they're a absolute monster right now.
Neil in the chat brings up something, though, that's interesting as kind of a counter to that. He says, NBA used to be my second favorite sport. I can't even watch it now. It's just three-point shots and traveling now. Well, 100%, there's more three-point shots than there's ever been. The teams are adopting the high volume, and it is. It's a little bit of a math game. It's a little bit of analytics meeting basketball. But aren't 25, 28, 34-foot shots that go in, isn't that objectively entertaining compared to dumping it into the post?
I would agree. I think the game's faster. It's more entertaining. The best basketball I've ever watched was the COVID bubble tournament. No distractions, everybody playing basketball, very up-tempo. For some reason, they were all very up-tempo. It was fast. It was some slugfest games. And I think that the league, if you look at it, I mean, I much rather have this than the 80s slow down scoring in the 80s and 70s, you know, back to the basket, big man, very slow, deliberate offense.
Hand checking, grabbing.
This is way better. Now, I agree that the officiating, because the players have gotten so much more athletic and so much faster, the officiating has gotten worse because it's harder to officiate games when you have people that big. But shooting threes, I think threes are exciting. And I think spreading the floor makes drives more exciting. You know, you're not clogging the lane. You're not getting into these stagnant situations. And so I really enjoy, actually, the way that the game has gone.
Yeah, I do too. I just think the game has evolved. I think that basketball has evolved. And what you see in the NBA is you see the highest level of that. And then it trickles down to college. It trickles down to high school. It trickles
you can see
down.
it in college right now.
Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, just very, like I said, I'm interested in seeing how the league evolves, how the league changes. And here's how I'll address this, because I see it, you know, it's like we've got, yes, it's objectively better. No. Here's Adam in the chat. NBA hasn't been watchable in a long time, says Adam. Well, I think in a lot of ways, the NBA is almost kind of like music. You're always going to love the music most that you listen to somewhere between ages 14 and 22. And those are the songs that you will decide when you're 50 were the best songs that were ever made. And that's true for someone who's 50 right now. That's true for someone who's 30 right now. It's true for someone who's 75 right now or 15. You're going to decide down the road, generations from now, you know, the best music was when I was a teenager.
Yeah.
That's the best. And
it's what you're most familiar with.
Right.
You're going to want, you know, think is the best. Adam said something in the chat right here, and I don't want this to be call out Adam thing, but he said players today couldn't play physical ball. LeBron James is 6'9", 260 pounds with 4% body fat and plays like a guard. He could play in a physical era of a basketball.
Yeah.
You know,
he is a physical era.
Yeah,
of
I mean, look
basketball.
at Nikola Jokic. You really think he couldn't go to battle with some of the centers from the 80s? Like, he's massive and he's so skilled. Like, I get that, like, the style was different and it was you could practically murder a guy and it would just be a regular personal foul. I get that. And players are not used to that, but they're good at what they're used to. Do I think that some of these guys could adjust? They're way bigger, way stronger, and way faster than those guys. Yes, I think they could adjust.
The Lakers game last night, I don't want to touch on it at too much length. I think it was a beautiful moment for the James family that was harmless to the LA Lakers.
And harmless to the NBA, too.
Yeah, for LeBron and Bronny to appear in a game at the same time. I think if Bronny stays on the Lakers roster all year, that could be harmful to the Lakers, but I also find that nearly impossible to believe.
I think he's headed to the G League very soon.
Yeah.
And I think that, you know, I think people forget, because he didn't have a great college run, that before Bronny entered college, he was projected as an eventual second-round pick. And he does have some skill. I don't know if he'll ever be an NBA regular, but he wasn't bad. And I think that people think that, you know, this is a guy who, look at his college numbers, he never did anything. And that's true. He was also recovering from a very serious heart problem and didn't really get a ramp up to the season. Now, he's going to have to shoot the ball better. He's going to have to he has good basketball instincts. He plays pretty good defense, but he's going to have to shoot the ball. At his size, he's going to have to do more than he does now because he's small. He's 6'1". So but I don't think that people get that he was actually somebody that people were looking at as a second-round pick eventually. I think he probably should have stayed in college, but this was, you know, their choice. And I think that he's going to need a lot of developing, certainly in the G League. But the moment last night was nice. LeBron's done a lot for the NBA. He's done a lot for the league. If this is the concession after all those years that he gets to have a moment with his son in the middle of a game, is that really not worth it for all you've gotten from him?
Right.
You know, and so just globally what you've gotten from him.
And here's the other thing about LeBron. I watching him last night, tell me he couldn't play till he's 45.
Oh, he can play as long as he wants.
If he wants to, he can do it.
Yeah.
He could have waited for Bronny to be a senior graduated from college, and he'd probably still be in the league.
I mean, he's one of those guys that we will look back at and just say, I don't know how he did it. Like, I don't, and I think people take it for granted just how good he is and how good he has been for this long. You compare him to Michael Jordan and all that stuff. Michael Jordan was the best winner in the NBA ever. LeBron James has had the best career of anyone in the NBA ever, and it's not close. I think that he has so far surpassed everybody else as far as accomplishments and how long he's done it that we take it for granted and don't realize just how good he is. Perfect example is in that gold medal game this summer. When it was crunch time, in a couple of those games, he was destroying other teams, just driving right by him and scoring. At, what is he, 39?
He's 39 going on 40.
Yeah, and then, of course, Steph closed it out in those games, but he just can still do it. Whenever he wants to turn it on, he can.
Last thing before I let you go, Ryan, teased it earlier. Yesterday in an auction, Shohei Ohtani's 50th home run ball from the game where he set the 50-50 caught in Miami. I actually put the link, Braden, in the 115 in our rundown if we want to put that video up to just remind people of what the scene was in the left field bleachers at Lone Depot Park when Ohtani put that 50th home run ball into the outfield. A mad scramble ensued underneath a table in kind of a club area. And one dude wound up, we're playing it now, if you're watching us on YouTube. And if you're listening, you can always watch our show on YouTube, 97.3 The Fan page. Go there, hit like if you're in. Here's the ball, hitting, bouncing. It's under a table. Here go three dudes. One thinks he has it. Now a fifth dude comes crashing in. There's chairs falling. There's guys laughing. And eventually one dude comes out with the ball.
Just rips it away.
Rips it away. Two other people are claiming, and there's the guy holding up the ball. Two other people are claiming that actually they were holding the ball.
And it's theft.
And that, it was taken from them. Those lawsuits are literally in court.
Yeah, I saw that.
But that didn't stop the auction house from conducting the sale. And the Ohtani 50th home run ball went for $4.4 million.
If you buy that, you have a ridiculous amount. You have too much money.
You have too much money.
If you're paying that for the 50th home run ball, again, because what are you going to do? You're going to put it on display in your house and just to impress people?
Yeah.
A $4.1 million mantelpiece? I mean, I don't get it. I really don't.
Well, you've got to be ridiculously wealthy, a collector, right? But here's what I wanted to say about it. Obviously, the courts will determine whether this guy gets all that money,
right?
Whether he has to share the money, whether he has to surrender. I doubt he has to surrender the ball. Possession is 9/10 of the law.
Yeah, it's going to be hard. Plus, it's hard to prove under that table who had what.
Yeah,
But
earlier in the year, when Shohei hit the homer that made him Japan's all-time leading home run hitter, that home run was at Dodger Stadium. It was caught in the bleachers, and then the Dodgers came to those fans.
I wrote this story.
I remember, right? Came to those fans and,
coerced them. Let's say
that's
they
a good
coerced
word.
them to give it
coerced them to give up the ball. They were promised they would meet Shohei. They actually didn't, as it turned out. But they got, some stuff. They get a signed this, signed bat, signed jersey, all of these things. $4.4 million. No one ever should give the ball back again.
No, do not give that ball back. Like if it's a kid's first home run, a rookie's first home run, that's, come up with it and agree a deal, like whatever. But milestone home runs like that, don't ever give it back.
Yeah, it should. The only reason I wanted to bring that up is because a lot of that's discussed in places just like this, sports talk radio. So I just want to make clear, it should be normalized in our discourse that if you catch a milestone ball, that's your lotto ticket.
Yeah.
Go get it. And don't you, it's almost unscrupulous for a multi-billion-dollar organization like a Major League Baseball team to be like, no, just give that away.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I thought what the Dodgers did in that instance was awful. And basically everyone around said, no, they were basically coercing them by saying, like, we can take it anyway. And it's like, no, you can't. Like, that's in the stands. That belongs to that person. It's not like if it's on our property, it's ours. That's not how that works. And so I just remember thinking that was a really terrible look for the Dodgers to do that. And the people may have given it up anyway if you're not coercing them. Maybe they would have, but they shouldn't have. They should have held on to it.
$4.4 million.
Shohei's got the money to buy it from you.
Right. Yeah, Shohei, I'll give it to you for $3.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Like, hey, we don't have to go through the auction. I'll give it to you for $3.
Yeah.
Why not? Peel out some of that deferred cash, buddy. Send it out the other way. All right, Ryan, thank you for being in. Tell everybody where they can follow you.
Just go to Rumors and Rants on Twitter or just go to SI.com. Check out our stuff. We're doing a lot of great work.
Ryan Phillips in studio here on Annie and Elsten. Thank you so much, my friend. We're going to take our last time out of the show. When we come back, we're going to open up the phones on Ask Us Anything. And with no Annie here, it's an Ask Craig and Braden Anything segment. So give us a ring. You've got about 12 minutes to call the show. 833-288-0973. 833-288-0973. Give us a ring during the break. We'll put you on hold, and then we'll put you on the air when we come back. Only thing we ask of you, come with a question ready to ask the show. Doesn't have to be about sports. It could be about anything. Annie and Elsten coming back after this timeout. Gwen and Chris, top of the hour on The Fan. KSON Country Fest is coming March 22nd to Gallagher Square in Petco Park with Justin Moore, Nate Smith, and Warren Ziders. Presale tickets are just $38, but only until 10 o'clock tonight. You got to visit KSON.com and use the code word KSON. So go to KSON.com, buy the tickets, just $38 presale. You got to use the code word KSON. KSON. KSON Country Fest, March 22nd, Gallagher Square, Petco Park. All right. Craig and Braden back here with you. Final segment of the show. Gwen and Chris standing by at 2 o'clock. Phone lines are open, 833-288-0973, as we play the bumper and move to this. She's not here. I'm here. Here we go. Questions for Craig and Braden today. 833-288-0973. Annie will be back with us tomorrow. You've still got a solid 6 minutes to call the show, and we'll get you on the air. Probably aren't going to screen you. We're just going to probably pull you up. So 833-288-0973 if you want to give us a call. Here is Cornelius in North Park who gave us a call. Hi, Cornelius. Ask us anything.
Hey, gentlemen. How you doing? My question is this, real quick. I'm a high school basketball official. My colleague is Chris Ella.
I was just going to say, is your colleague walking in here in about 5 minutes from now?
Exactly. But I can ask him. I see him a lot. What I want to ask is, we got Braden, who's involved with high school sports as a coach. And Craig, I'm going to guess maybe sometimes you get out to high school sporting events on occasion. I personally, as an official, basketball official, think sportsmanship and fan behavior in the stands is getting worse. I'd love to have both of your takes on that, fellas, please.
Great question, Cornelius, and thank you for calling the show. I'm going to default to my assistant high school football coach in the room who is at a game every week, because I've been to a couple of games this year. I used to do a lot of high school announcing, like for Time Warner Cable in the North County, and I used to be out at games, both football and basketball, all the time. But I'm curious as to what you have seen in terms of fan behavior.
It is out of control. It's flat out of control.
Wow.
And there's a big reason why they have an official shortage. It's out of control from them. It's out of control from a lot of the players and a lot of the coaching staffs too. And it's just it's really not good. And you see it at a lot of different levels of sports now, just the way people handle themselves. I think it's a societal problem because I don't think a lot of people know how to behave anymore, and it's ridiculous. And I can see why it's very difficult to be an official. It's hard to be a coach right now too, with the way that some parents act towards you and everything else like that. So it's tough. I feel for the officials all the time. I mean, basketball is even crazier because they're right there on the court. I mean, you're there. You don't have the track that separates you. But yeah, it is out of control. I think we need to be better as a society in acting because again, at the end of the day, it's supposed to be fun, and we have made sports so corporate and thinking everybody's going to go pro and make a ton of money that it's really eliminated the fun of a lot of it.
Good question, Cornelius. I think you've just got a better perspective than I do. I can't really talk to the last handful of years. Now my son's about to go into high school, so I'm sure I'm going to be watching a lot of high school games over the next 4 years.
Yes.
And I hope to update my take on that as well. But great question, Cornelius. Way to kick us off. Here's Sam in Del Mar who gave us a call, 833-288-0973. Phone line still open. Hi, Sam. Ask us anything.
Howdy, gentlemen. Quick question. Out of the current Padre roster, who would you trade? What free agent would you sign? And who would you non-tender?
Wow. Feels like blank, marry, kill here.
Yeah.
For the San
Pretty
Diego
much.
Padres.
That was my inspiration.
What's our non-tenure list?
That would be your kill right there. Sam, great question there. I'm going to put you on hold. Let's think it through. Okay, first I'm going to invite you at a later moment to go back to the 11 a.m. hour of the show when I had on Rafi from Padres Hot Tub, because we literally gave sneaky tradable assets. And the guy that I put out there was Robert Suarez. Gets paid $10 million this year, has an opt-out after 2025. Padres have in-house alternatives with Estrada, with Jason Adam, with Morejon. You can build a sixth-inning reliever on the back end for a lot cheaper than $10 million. So while I'm not advocating this or saying that I think it would be the best course of action, I think it's a course of action for the Padres. That would be a player, Braden, that the Padres could trade.
I like that as a potential option because, he's making a decent amount of money coming up. And, for me, closers are luxuries that they're not necessarily major assets that you need. Those are like the extra things for you. It's like a rich person wanting to, own a yacht, right? It doesn't make a lot of financial sense. It's just kind of the extra luxury of being rich. So I agree with you, especially that he has an opt-out. I mean, if he has another good year, he might be opting out and he could get some, an even bigger contract. I think that is the move because he's obviously valuable to a lot of teams out there being a closer. I think that would be an option. But I think I think your most value right now is in the pitching department when it comes to trades. And if you're going to trade somebody, you got to trade somebody that's going to make a decent amount of money that will provide value because you don't have that sitting on your roster anymore like you did last year with Juan Soto.
Great question, Sam. In terms of an extension, Padres aren't in a great spot to give out extensions right now.
No.
Obviously, Jackson Merrill is a player you want to keep here for as long as possible. So if that's something they want to explore this offseason, they can. However, I do think from a what's the right way? A pragmatic way of looking at things from the Padres front office, they might be buying high to try and extend him off of what could be a Rookie of the Year or second-place Rookie of the Year finish. And they might be in a slightly different position after his second year if he doesn't match or exceed what he did in year one. Now, if he matches or exceeds what he did in year one, you lost that gamble. You got to pay even more money down the road. But I could very well see the Padres wait a year on Jackson Merrill before they try and make the big money offer.
Especially since they already tried to make that happen before this year even started. And they couldn't find an agreement. I mean, obviously, right now, Jackson's got all the leverage with the way that he has played. Especially, we'll have to wait to see what the Rookie of the Year award is. But, maybe it's in the best interest of the Padres to see if he comes down in a little bit of a sophomore slump and they can get the leverage back. Because, again, you're trying to keep this guy on your team for as long as possible while also not having to overpay or pay as much as possible. So I'd put him number one on my list of extension candidates, though. Out of all the players the Padres currently have that are not on a long-term deal, that would be the guy that, to me, that has the most value, aside from probably the two other minor leaguers that have not debuted yet and probably won't debut for a couple of years.
If I was going to offer an extension to a pitcher, I think King is the guy that I would explore. But I feel like that is also the 2025 Michael King season is going to be fascinating because it's going to go one of a couple ways, right? Seth Lugo had no problem after he had his giant jump in innings.
Right.
He went to Kansas City and he was an all-star. Other guys blow out their arm the next year. King does have a crossfire delivery. It's the one thing that makes me hesitate before saying give him a 4 or 5 year deal. But having said that one little caveat and nervousness, I think he's got the mental makeup, I think he's got the body type, and I think he's got the stuff to continue to be an excellent pitcher down the road. And if there's one guy more than Cease, it would be King for me that I would try and lock up.
King's got the most upside for sure. 100%.
Great question, Sam. I don't think there's any non-tender candidates.
Yeah,
right now.
What's our list? Do we have a list?
It's like Manny Machado, Xander Bogaerts, Joe Musgrove, Yu Darvish, Jake Cronenworth. All of our outgoing guys are free agents. You don't non-tender a free agent.
Right,
So,
exactly.
I don't know that the Padres will continue with a guy like a David Peralta or a Donovan Solano next year. However, I would also say they're not going to be expensive.
No, they're not.
They'll come back to you for $1 million. So
That
we'll
worked
see.
out last time for the Padres, signing a veteran to $1 million deal. Maybe they can continue that
Yeah.
success.
J-Prof.
That's right.
It all worked out. All right, Braden, great stuff. We're going to be back at it tomorrow.
Yeah, looking forward to it.
Annie Halburn will be here with us as well. But up next, Gwynn and Chris with Matt Scraby checking in for the Gwynn and Chris Show. For Braden, I'm Craig. Have a great rest of your day.